Excuse me, you're in the way. Please move. Alright then, what's my name? Kane. I'm a sophomore in college, just wrapped up my general education courses. Majoring in economics and gearing up for specialized subjects next year. Job hunting looms. And I'm weighing grad school too. My parents are supportive, giving me the freedom to choose my path, thanks to our solid financial footing. Dad's success in business means we've never struggled financially, and I'm truly grateful for that. Once I land a job, I'm eager to repay their generosity. But despite outward appearances, I've got my own challenges. It's about my brother and his wife. Rick, my older brother by 10 years, and I have never really clicked. Despite what others say about opposite gender siblings with a significant age gap not being close, Rick and I have always conversed plenty. Yet closeness eludes us. Hey Kane, could you run out and grab some comics for me and pick up a notebook for studying? Use your own allowance, of course. Oh, and grab a drink too. I've been running these errands for him for years. When our parents were around, they'd sometimes intervene, but with both of them working, I mostly just went along out of fear. Even now that I'm an adult, this dynamic hasn't changed. It feels like it's only gotten worse. The tipping point came last year when Rick married Stacy, who's the same age as him. Stacy's attractive, but she's also pretty distant. I didn't warm to her from the start, and it turns out my instincts were spot on. You have a sister. Your parents are well off. I wonder if Caitlin could give us $5,000 as wedding money, Stacy once remarked, despite knowing I'm still in school. Fortunately, my parents stepped in. Kate is still a student living at home. The wedding gift will be the same as ours. Maybe a little extra, they replied firmly. But my brother and Stacy weren't satisfied. That's not fair. You're an adult now. You need to pay up. Yeah, we're family now. It's time to step up, they insisted. To avoid any drama, I reluctantly handed over the money my parents had given me. Frankly, both my brother and Stacy seemed pretty greedy. I had hoped to keep my distance, but they kept showing up at our house despite my objections. They never missed a chance to criticize me for living at home and commuting to college. You're still living at home. You're not planning to be a freeloader forever, are you? I don't want a sister who's just mooching off her parents. Seriously, even if your college is nearby, it's so lame. Why don't you move out? We could save on utilities and groceries, and there'd be more inheritance left for us. My brother said all this despite having commuted from home to college himself and even having to repeat 2 years. Stacy's remarks were just as cutting. My parents are still active and healthy, but she's already talking about inheritance. It's just tactless. I've held my tongue, fearing the reactions, but things have only worsened. Now, for some reason, they're bringing their belongings into our home, despite living just 30 minutes away in a spacious apartment. Rick, this stuff is cluttering up the place. Why bring it here? You have your own home, don't you? Mom finally spoke up, but Rick brushed it off. This is my home too. What's the big deal? Besides, Kane has plenty of stuff here. Kane lives here, after all. Well, I'm also a child of this house. You shouldn't treat your children differently. There's nothing wrong with keeping our things here. Stacy is part of my family now, so she's part of this household. Future in-laws, Rick will eventually inherit everything. Might as well get a head start, right? They continued to disregard my parents' warnings. Then, one day, things escalated further. On a weekend morning, I awoke to the heavy footsteps echoing through the house. Burly men filled every room, following my brother and Stacy as they shuffled belongings around, clearly hired for the task. What about this? Leave it there. But take that one away. Got it. Following my brother's commands, the men began moving drawers that belonged to my parents and me. They even started packing up my college textbooks and other daily essentials. Hey, what's going on? Stop this right now. Well, we were hired by them, one of the movers replied nonchalantly. No matter how much I protested, they paid no heed. Even my direct complaints were met with puzzled looks directed towards my brother and Stacy. Apparently, they had been hired for a handsome sum. Before I knew it, all the essential items were loaded onto a truck parked outside without a moment's pause. Oh, Kane, leave your money. We'll put it to good use. And please take those 2 old folks with you. You can keep your wallet, at least. They'll think we're heartless. We've rented a weekly apartment for you to stay with Mom and Dad. 2 weeks' rent is already covered. Go there for now. Your belongings will be delivered there soon. What? You can't. But before I could utter another word, They escorted me and my parents out into the yard. I stood there, stunned, gazing back at the house where I had slept just moments before. Reality hit me hard. I couldn't afford to freeze in shock. I'm an adult now, not just a child needing protection from my parents. I guess I'll have to take a break from college. I'll find a part-time job to get by for now. I wonder what happened to my bank book and SIL. It would have been nice if my brother had set aside some basic funds for me, but I can't dwell on it all day. The only thing to do is head to the weekly apartment they mentioned. It's okay, Dad, Mom. I'm not a kid anymore, I assured them, turning to see their stunned expressions, undoubtedly feeling betrayed by my brother. It fell to me to lift their spirits. My expectations were shattered, but in a strangely positive way, huh? When I turned back, both of them were smiling. Well, that went better than I thought, didn't it? It happened quicker than we anticipated. What? Hold on, what's going on? As it turned out, they had suspected my siblings' plan all along. Since the moment they started moving their belongings, they have foreseen a day like this. But listen, Kane, people like them won't back down no matter what you say. If anything, they'll dig in deeper when confronted with reason. Exactly. You can't confront someone like Rick directly. Let them think they've won. They'll lower their guard. That's when you strike. What? So this was all part of your plan? Their smiles widened at my question. Your dad didn't build a company from scratch for nothing. It's time to teach you some of the skills that supported him, Kane. I'll show you how to handle situations like this. They suggested we head to the weekly apartment for now. I had thought we would go straight home to confront my siblings, but apparently that wasn't the plan. Following Dad's lead, I walked with a heavy heart, pretending to be deeply discouraged. I feel like we're being followed. Don't worry, Kane. Just act like you don't notice. People like Rick and Stacy thrive on tormenting others. They'll likely report back that we seem downcast. Keep playing along, okay? Taking their advice, I headed to the apartment. Once inside, they announced with renewed energy. Most of the plan has worked. It's time to turn the tables on Rick and his crew. At Mom's signal, Dad made a call. Proceed as discussed. He was arranging with a moving company. It appeared one of Dad's trusted employees was ready to oversee the operation. Soon, movers were streaming into our home. Boss, everything is proceeding according to plan. Your son and daughter-in-law appear to be quite surprised. Well, that's to be expected. Keep going. Through the phone, there was a murmur of live updates. Apparently, Dad had briefed the movers on which items to take. The sounds of safes and other valuables being moved filled the space. What's going on? Are you barging into someone's house like this? What's the deal? Excuse me, should I call the police? No need. We're here at the homeowner's request. Hey, could you please move? You're blocking our way. Wait a minute, that's my safe with my bank book inside. Where are you taking it? Your father requested this. We're moving it to the new house. What's happening here? I was just about to open that safe. It's your father's decision. And Rick, it's quite telling that as his own son, you don't know the safe combination. Clearly, there's a lack of trust. Shut up. You're just an employee. Wait, that jewelry belongs to my mother-in-law. Why are you taking it? This is under the vice president's orders. It's also being moved to the new home. If anything happens to it, you'll be held responsible. What? Hold on, I can't afford that. Please don't interfere. About an hour later, the room fell silent and I overheard one of the employees. Mr. President, Vice President, all arrangements are complete. Apologies for disturbing you on your day off. No trouble at all, thank you. My father ended the call and turned to me. Let's head to our new home. He guided me to a mansion just as opulent as our previous one, if not more grandiose. What is this place? Our new residence. Yes, Kane, the security here is even tighter. Rick won't find it easy to gain access. And the old house? I sold it discreetly. The broker will take over tomorrow. And what about Rick and Stacy? Don't know, don't care. They might be forced out, but that house was never truly theirs. They'll manage. Exactly, Kane. We have a lot to do today with the move. We need to get everything settled by tonight. Encouraged by my parents, we all got to work. We familiarized ourselves with the layout of the new house and began organizing our rooms and living spaces. By nightfall, everything was in place. That evening, I was so exhausted that thoughts of Rick slipped away, and I fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after a refreshing rest, my parents filled me in. They had been planning for this day since Rick got married. Rick has always been like that, and I suspected Stacy would follow suit, so I had a contingency plan in place. Moving into this house was part of it. It's a secret even from Rick, ensuring our peace here. What about Rick? I doubt they'll stay quiet after all this. You're right, Rick and his group are upset, but we have a top-notch lawyer from our company. It's clear who's in the wrong here, don't you think? Absolutely. Dad's legal advisor contacted my brother. They've been warned that any further attempts to harm us will result in a lawsuit. If that's how it's going to be, count me out. Upon hearing this, my brother abandoned his plans to seize our old home. They were left empty-handed, but that wasn't the end of it. Turns out my brother couldn't find a job after college. He was only working at Dad's company out of sympathy. There's no place for someone like you here. You're not my son anymore. Consider yourself fired. Following this incident, my brother, who lacks skills to begin with, appears to be struggling to secure new employment. Stacy, who valued money above all else, was furious. Rick, you're worthless without money? I want a divorce. She said that, and they divorced. But Stacy didn't escape consequences either. Dad spoke to Stacy's employer about the situation. They couldn't afford to keep her, especially if it meant jeopardizing a crucial client relationship. They let Stacy go with the condition that their business relationship would continue as usual. I can't believe this is happening to me. I was supposed to be the boss's wife, living the high life. All those jewels, that mansion, they were supposed to be mine. Stacy complained bitterly, but it was too late. She was left with nothing. Her family knew the situation but showed no intention of helping her. They're strange. Dad filled me in on all this. It made me realize that despite thinking I was grown up, I've been naive. There's still so much I can learn from my parents. I must keep striving to ensure I never end up like my brother or Stacy. Luckily, I still have time before graduating from college, so I'll keep working hard, following my parents' example.
I stand in front of the gilded mirror, watching my engagement ring catch the light. 3 carats of pure manipulation wrapped around my finger like a golden shackle. The ballroom behind me buzzes with the chatter of Boston's elite, but all I hear is the clock ticking down to my public execution. Valentina, that's me, the marketing manager who dared to capture the heart of Karen Wellington's precious son. Or so the society papers say. There you are, darling. Ethan's reflection appears beside mine, his hand settling on my waist. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect posture, everything his mother demanded of her golden child. Mother's about to make the toast. She's been planning this moment for weeks. Of course she has. I force my lips into the smile I've practiced 1,000 times. Wouldn't want to disappoint her. The grand ballroom of the Wellington estate stretches before us like a battlefield dressed in crystal and silk. 200 of Boston's finest gathered to celebrate our engagement, or rather to witness Karen's latest power play. Sophie catches my eye from across the room, raising her champagne glass in silent support. At least one person here isn't buying into this charade. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen's voice cuts through the crowd like a diamond through glass. She stands at the center of the room, commanding attention in her Valentino dress that probably costs more than my yearly salary. We're gathered here today to celebrate not just an engagement, but a merger of families. The crowd titters. Marcus, Ethan's father, smirks from his position beside his wife. I feel Ethan's hand tighten on my waist. When Ethan first mentioned he was dating someone from marketing, Karen continues, her pause calculated for maximum effect, I must admit, I was concerned. After all, the Wellington name carries certain expectations. My chest tightens. This isn't going where I thought it would. But then I realized, perhaps this is exactly what our family needs. Someone to handle our public image. She smiles, all teeth and no warmth. Though I do hope, Valentina dear, that you'll consider pursuing something more befitting your new position. Perhaps as a full-time mother. The Wellington legacy must continue after all. The room erupts in polite laughter. I feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I keep my smile frozen in place. Years of practice hiding my emotions from difficult clients finally paying off. And of course, Karen adds, lifting her glass higher, we've already arranged for Ethan to take over as CEO of our East Coast operations. Can't have our future daughter-in-law out-earning her husband, can we? More laughter. Ethan's hand drops from my waist. He's not even looking at me anymore. To the happy couple, Karen concludes, her voice dripping with false sweetness. May they understand their proper places in this family. The crowd raises their glasses. I catch Sophie's expression, pure fury on my behalf. But it's Daniel, Ethan's younger brother, whose reaction interests me most. He's watching his mother with an expression I've never seen before. Calculated hatred. "Darling," Ethan whispers, finally noticing my rigid posture. "Mother means well. She's just traditional." Traditional? Like the way she systematically destroyed my father's construction company last year. Like the mysterious circumstances surrounding my mother's death 15 years ago. A death that I'm beginning to suspect has Wellington fingerprints all over it. I raise my glass, meeting Karen's triumphant gaze across the room. "Thank you, Mother Wellington," I say, my voice carrying clearly, "for making everything so crystal clear." She doesn't catch the edge in my voice, but Sophie does. So does Daniel. They're the only ones who see my smile shift from practiced politeness to something harder, colder. Karen Wellington just handed me the perfect weapon, her own arrogance. She thinks she's putting me in my place, but all she's done is show me exactly where to strike. I take a sip of champagne, already plotting. This engagement party isn't an end, it's a beginning. And Karen has no idea what she just started. The morning after the engagement party, I sit across from my father at our usual diner, pushing eggs around my plate while he reads the society page coverage of my humiliation. His knuckles whiten around the newspaper edges. "I always knew Karen Wellington was cruel," he says finally, "but to do this so publicly. Did you know them? Before?" The question slips out before I can stop it. I've never asked about his connection to the Wellingtons, despite suspecting there's more to the story than he's told me. He sets down the paper, and for a moment, I see something flash across his face. Fear, maybe, or anger, but it's gone before I can be sure. Boston's a small world when you're in real estate development. The bell above the diner door chimes. Ethan walks in, spotting us immediately. Perfect timing, as always. My father's expression closes off like a vault. "There's my beautiful fiancé," Ethan announces, sliding into the booth beside me. He kisses my cheek, all performance. "And future father-in-law. I hope you enjoyed last night's celebration." My father's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Quite the speech your mother gave. Mother can be traditional." Ethan's hand finds mine under the table, squeezing too tight. "But she means well. Actually, that's why I'm here. She'd like to have lunch with you today, Valentina, to smooth things over." I extract my hand from his grip. "I have meetings all day." "I've already cleared your schedule with your supervisor." His smile doesn't waver. Mother's very persuasive when she wants something. The implications sink in. Karen's reach extends into my workplace now. I meet my father's gaze across the table, seeing my own alarm reflected there. "You know what?" I stand abruptly. "I need some air. Excuse me." Outside, the autumn air bites at my skin. I hear footsteps behind me. Ethan, of course, always following his mother's script. "You're being difficult," he says, catching my arm. "Mother's trying to make amends." I turn to face him. "Like she made amends with the Harrison family." He flinches. "The Harrison family, their development company, went bankrupt last year after dealing with Wellington Enterprises. I discovered the connection during my background research on Karen." "That was business," he says carefully. "This is family." "Is there a difference in your mother's world?" His phone buzzes, Karen's special ringtone. He answers immediately, turning away from me. "Yes, Mother. No, she's being difficult. I understand. Yes, I'll handle it." Handle it. Like I'm a problem to be managed. When he faces me again, his expression has hardened. "The lunch isn't optional, Valentina. Either you show up willingly, or Mother will make things very uncomfortable for you at work." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting you." He steps closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know what Mother's capable of when she's crossed." "But I do know. I've spent months piecing together the trail of destroyed careers and broken lives left in Karen Wellington's wake, including, I suspect, my mother's death, though I can't prove it yet. Fine, I say, forcing a smile. Tell your mother I'll be there. Relief floods his face. He kisses my forehead, missing how I stiffen at his touch. That's my girl. I'll have the car pick you up at noon. I watch him leave, then pull out my phone to text Sophie. Need your help. Lunch with the devil today. Time to start phase 2. Her reply comes instantly. Already on it. Daniel reached out, says he has information we need. I glance back through the diner window. My father sits alone now, staring at his coffee like it holds answers. He looks older suddenly, weighted down by secrets I'm only beginning to understand. My phone buzzes again. Sophie sending an address. A meeting point with Daniel, away from his family's watching eyes. If he's really willing to turn against his mother, it could change everything. I straighten my spine, checking my reflection in a nearby window. The woman staring back at me isn't the same one who endured last night's humiliation. She's harder now, sharper at the edges. Karen wants to have lunch? Fine. I'll sit across from her, play the dutiful future daughter-in-law. But while she's busy trying to put me in my place, she won't notice me learning all her weaknesses. After all, she taught me herself. The best attacks come disguised as submission. The private dining room at Leblanc feels like a trap, all crystal and white tablecloths. Karen sits across from me, perfectly composed, while Marcus hovers near the window, phone pressed to his ear. Their voices drift around me, discussing business as if I'm not here. The Harrison portfolio, Marcus says into his phone. Yes, all of it. Transfer everything by Monday. My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. The Harrison portfolio, my father's former business partner. The same company Karen destroyed last year. More wine, dear. Karen's voice drips honey. She's watching me, always watching. No, thank you. I set down my fork. Actually, I'm curious about something. The Harrisons, wasn't their daughter in my class at Boston Prep? Karen's smile tightens. Perhaps. Though they've relocated since their unfortunate business decisions. Marcus ends his call, joining us at the table. Speaking of business, Valentina, we have a proposition for you. We've been discussing your role in the company, Karen adds. Post-wedding, of course. I feel my phone vibrate, probably Sophie waiting nearby with Daniel. But I can't check it now, not when I'm finally getting close to something real. What kind of role? A ceremonial one, Karen says smoothly. You'll need to resign from your current position naturally. Can't have our daughter-in-law working under others. And my father's remaining contracts? Marcus sets down his wine glass too hard. Karen's hand touches his arm. A warning. Your father's business dealings are his concern, she says. Though we could assist if you're amenable to our terms. The pieces click together. They're not just trying to control me, they're using me to get to my father's remaining assets. The same way they used the Harrison's daughter to... The door opens. Ethan walks in, followed by a familiar face that stops my heart. James Harrison. My former classmate's father, looking nothing like the confident businessman I remember. Sorry I'm late, Ethan announces. James had some paperwork to finish. James won't meet my eyes. His hands shake as he sets a folder on the table. Perfect timing, Karen says. Valentina, dear, we need you to sign as a witness. Just a small matter regarding some property transfers. I open the folder. Inside, I find documents transferring my father's remaining development rights to Wellington Enterprises. They've forged his signature, perfectly, professionally. But it needs a witness to be legal. They want me to be that witness. James? My voice comes out steadier than I feel. Are you okay? Just sign it, Valentina, Ethan says quietly. Please. But I'm watching James. The defeat in his posture, the fear when he glances at Karen. This is how they do it. How they've always done it. Using family against family, forcing people to destroy themselves. I stand up slowly. I need to use the restroom. Sit down, Marcus snaps, but Karen raises a hand. Let her go. She needs time to understand what's best for everyone. In the hallway, I finally check my phone. 3 messages from Sophie. Daniel found the files. It's worse than we thought. Your mother's accident. It wasn't an accident. My hands shake as I type. Get everything to my father. Now. When I return to the dining room, they're waiting exactly as I left them. Like predators, patient and confident. Ready to sign? Karen asks. I pick up the pen, studying its weight. 15 years ago, my mother died in a car accident after discovering something about Wellington Enterprises. Now I'm sitting across from the people responsible, watching them try to destroy another family. Actually, I say, I have a counter-proposal. I pull out my phone, opening the recording app that's been running since I entered the restaurant. Karen's eyes narrow as she realizes what I'm holding. You really should be more careful discussing illegal property transfers in public spaces, I say, especially when threatening people into compliance. Marcus stands abruptly. Ethan reaches for my arm, but I step back. You have no idea what you're doing, Karen says, her mask finally cracking. No, I reply. I think for the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. I turn to James. The Harrisons send their regards and their evidence. The colour drains from Karen's face. In this moment, watching her perfect world begin to crack, I finally understand. Revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about saving yourself. Sophie's apartment feels like the last safe place in Boston. We sit surrounded by papers and laptops, piecing together the puzzle of Wellington Enterprises' corruption. Daniel paces by the window, his shadow cutting through the afternoon light. They killed her, I say, staring at the accident report from 15 years ago. My mother wasn't investigating real estate fraud. She found evidence of money laundering. Daniel stops pacing. The offshore accounts. That's why they're so desperate to get control of your father's company now. They need a legitimate business to... A knock at the door silences us. Sophie checks the security camera and tenses. It's Ethan. My engagement ring feels like it's burning my finger. Let him in. Ethan enters, his usual polish cracked around the edges. His eyes land on Daniel first, then the scattered documents. So this is where you've been hiding, brother. Not hiding, Daniel says. Just finally choosing a side. Ethan runs a hand through his hair. A gesture so like his father's, it makes my skin crawl. Val, we need to talk. Alone. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of them. He moves closer, lowering his voice anyway. Mother knows about the recording. She's prepared to make things very difficult for your father if you don't hand it over. More difficult than destroying his business? Or having his wife killed? Ethan flinches. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stand, forcing him to step back. Your mother didn't just kill my mother. She's been systematically destroying families for years. The Harrisons were just the latest. Everything she did was to protect our family. Was it protection when she arranged Daniel's girlfriend's deportation last year? Daniel's sharp intake of breath tells me he didn't know I'd discovered that particular secret. Ethan's face goes pale. That was business, he says weakly. It's all business with your family, isn't it? I move to the window where a manila envelope sits ready. Which is why you'll understand what I have to do next. I hand him the envelope. He opens it, scanning the contents with growing horror. These are copies of everything, I tell him. Bank records, falsified documents, witness statements about my mother's accident. The originals are already with the FBI. You're bluffing. Check your phone. As if on cue, his phone buzzes. He reads the message, colour draining from his face. Mother's being questioned by federal agents, along with your father and half the board. I twist the engagement ring off my finger. Consider this my resignation from the Wellington family. He grabs my arm. You don't want to do this. We can still fix things. Like you fixed things for the Harrisons? Daniel steps forward. Or my girlfriend? Or Valentina's mother? I didn't know. Ethan's grip tightens. About any of it, I swear. But you suspected, I say quietly. And you chose to look away. Sophie moves between us, forcing Ethan to release me. I think you should leave. He backs toward the door, desperation replacing his usual confidence. Val, please. Whatever Mother did, I'm not her. No, I agree. You're worse. She at least owns what she is. After he's gone, Daniel turns to me. You really sent everything to the FBI? Not yet. I pick up my phone. But Karen doesn't know that. Right now, she's probably destroying evidence we haven't even found yet. Sophie grins. And security cameras are recording every minute of it. We have 48 hours before she realizes the FBI isn't actually investigating, I say. That's how long we have to find what she's trying to hide. Daniel pulls out his own phone. I can get us into the office tonight. Security still trusts me. I look at the accident report on the table at my mother's name in cold black type. Karen thought she could bury the truth under years of manipulation and fear. She didn't count on her victims finding each other. Tonight, then, I say, picking up the engagement ring. One last performance as the future Mrs. Wellington. The ring catches the light as I slip it back on, no longer a shackle but a key. Karen taught me well, the best attacks come disguised as submission, and I'm about to become her star pupil. Wellington Enterprises' 40th floor boardroom feels like a glass cage at midnight. Daniel works at Karen's computer while I rifle through Marcus's files, both of us racing against dawn. Sophie monitors the security feeds from her laptop, our only warning system if someone arrives. Found something, Daniel says, his voice tight. A series of transfers to a shell company called Meridian Holdings. Started the week before your mother's accident. My hands shake as I photograph the documents. Same company that bought out the Harrisons? And 6 other families in the past decade. He clicks through more files. All competitors or threats to Wellington's expansion. Sophie's voice crackles through our earpieces. Movement in the lobby. Security's doing their rounds early. I grab the last folder, but something falls out. A photograph. My mother, sitting at this very table, 15 years younger. The date stamp matches the week before her death. The elevator dings. Someone's coming up, Sophie warns. Not security, executive override code. Daniel closes the computer. We need to go. Wait. I flip the photo over. There's writing on the back. Meeting with Catherine Mills, Project Phoenix discussion. Val, now. Daniel grabs my arm. The elevator's at 38, 39. We slip into the executive washroom just as the doors open. Through the crack, I see Karen stride in, still wearing her dinner clothes. Marcus follows, looking haunted. The files have to be here, Karen says. That little bitch knows something. If she had proof, we'd be arrested already. Marcus paces, another habit Ethan inherited. Maybe we should consider her offer. To step down quietly? Karen laughs. The moment we lose control, everything unravels. The offshore accounts, Phoenix, all of it. My phone vibrates. Sophie texting that security's heading up too. We're trapped. What about Ethan? Marcus asks. He's still loyal. For now, but he's weak like his brother. One push from that girl and he'll crumble. I feel Daniel tense beside me. The security elevator pings. Mrs. Wellington? A guard's voice. Sorry to disturb you, but we detected unauthorized access to this floor. Karen's heels click closer to our hiding spot. Check everything. If anyone's here, I want them found. My heart pounds so loud I'm sure they'll hear it. Daniel's hand finds mine in the dark, squeezing once. A signal. He bursts out of the bathroom, startling everyone. Mother! Father! What are you doing here? Daniel? Karen recovers quickly. We could ask you the same thing. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get some work done. He moves toward the elevator, drawing their attention. Though clearly this is a bad time. I slip out while they're distracted, staying low behind the desks, almost to the second elevator. Check the bathroom, Karen orders the guard. I freeze. If they find evidence someone else was here, Daniel's cover is blown. So I do the one thing they won't expect. I stand up. Looking for me, Mother Wellington? Karen whirls around. For a split second, real fear crosses her face. She's seeing my mother's ghost in the darkness. What is this? Marcus demands. I hold up the photograph. Project Phoenix. That's what my mother discovered, isn't it? Before her convenient accident. Val, Daniel warns, but I'm done hiding. She was going to expose you. I step closer to Karen. just like the Harrisons tried to. Like all the others you destroyed. Karen's composure returns. Careful, dear. Wild accusations can be dangerous. So can evidence. I reach for my phone, but it's not in my pocket. Karen holds it up, smiling. Looking for this. You really should be more careful where you leave your things. At the dinner party, for instance. My blood runs cold. She's known all along. Security, she says smoothly. Please escort my future daughter-in-law out. And Daniel? Her voice hardens. We'll discuss your involvement later. As the guards lead me to the elevator, Karen calls out, Oh, and Valentina. Do give your father my regards. Such a shame about his new development project falling through tomorrow. The doors close on her triumphant smile. In my earpiece, Sophie whispers, Val, what do we do now? I watch the floor numbers descend, each one bringing me closer to a decision. Karen thinks she's won, that she's beaten me the same way she beat my mother. But she forgot something crucial. My mother fought alone. I touch my engagement ring, where I hid the real memory card. Tell Lily to release the first batch of documents to the press. It's time everyone learned about Project Phoenix. The game isn't over. It's just getting started. The Wellington Enterprises annual gala feels like a funeral dressed in designer clothes. News of Project Phoenix has been spreading through Boston's business circles for 3 days, and I can see the whispers following Karen across the ballroom. But she's still smiling, still commanding the room like nothing's wrong. I adjust my black evening gown, the one Ethan's parents bought me, their perfect puppet daughter-in-law. Sophie's voice comes through my earpiece. FBI's reviewing the evidence. They'll move within hours. But hours might be too late. I watch Daniel weave through the crowd, pale and shaken. He reaches me just as Karen takes the stage. She knows, he whispers, about everything. The evidence, the FBI, all of it. Distinguished guests, Karen's voice fills the room. Before we begin tonight's festivities, I have an announcement. My phone buzzes, a text from my father. They're seizing the company. All assets frozen. Our family has always valued transparency, Karen continues, her eyes finding mine in the crowd, which is why I must address the recent rumors about Project Phoenix. The room goes silent. Even the servers stop moving. Project Phoenix was indeed a restructuring initiative, she says smoothly, one that unfortunately required difficult decisions about certain struggling companies, including Mills Construction. My father's company. My mother's legacy. What we didn't know, Karen's voice hardens, was that Catherine Mills had been embezzling funds for years, putting not just her company but dozens of families at risk. The blood drains from my face. She's rewriting history, turning my mother into the villain. Thankfully, her daughter's recent actions helped us uncover the full scope of her crimes. Karen's smile is razor-sharp. Valentina, dear, would you join me? All eyes turn to me. It's a trap, but refusing would only confirm her lies. I walk to the stage, each step feeling like I'm walking to my execution. Karen embraces me, whispering in my ear, Check your phone. A new message appears, security footage from 15 years ago. My mother arguing with someone in her office, taking documents, getting into her car. We tried to protect you from the truth, Karen says loud enough for everyone to hear. About the accident, about what your mother was running from that night. The room spins. This can't be real. But now, Karen continues, Valentina has graciously agreed to help us make things right. Haven't you, dear? She's orchestrated everything perfectly. If I expose her now, she'll destroy my mother's reputation forever. If I play along, everything we've worked for disappears. Actually, I start, but Ethan suddenly appears beside me. Mother, he says, I think it's time we showed everyone the real Project Phoenix files. Karen's grip on my arm tightens. Ethan, don't... The ones showing how you and father orchestrated Catherine Mills' accident. He turns to the crowd. The same way you tried to arrange one for Valentina last night. Gasps ripple through the room. Marcus steps forward, but Daniel blocks his path. Security! Karen snaps. Remove them! Federal agents! The ballroom doors burst open. Everyone stay where you are! In the chaos that follows, I see Karen's mask finally crack. But it's not the FBI she's staring at. It's Ethan. You chose her, she says, disbelief coloring her voice. Over family? No, Mother. Ethan takes my hand. I chose justice. Something you taught me about, remember? As the agents approach, Karen turns to me one last time. You think this is victory? You've destroyed everything. Your mother's legacy, your future, this family. No, I say quietly. You did that 15 years ago. I'm just finishing what my mother started. They lead Karen and Marcus away, but I feel no triumph, just emptiness and questions that may never have answers. Later, in the quiet of the emptying ballroom, Ethan finds me staring at my mother's old photograph. The security footage, he says. It was doctored. We found the original in Father's private safe. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed Mother to believe she'd won. He touches my shoulder, just like you taught me. I look at him, really look at him, and see something I've missed before, the cost of revenge written in the shadows under his eyes. What happens now? I ask. He doesn't answer. Some questions don't have easy answers, and some victories feel more like wounds that may never heal. The holding cell at Boston Police Department feels smaller than my childhood closet. Karen sits across from me, still elegant despite the orange jumpsuit. No makeup, no designer clothes, but somehow she looks more dangerous than ever. You know why I'm here, I say, to gloat? Her smile hasn't changed. How disappointing. I thought I taught you better than that. You taught me plenty. I place my mother's photograph on the metal table between us. Like how to arrange an accident that looks natural. She doesn't even glance at the photo. Your mother made her choices, just like you've made yours. Did she choose to discover Project Phoenix, or did you choose to silence her? Project Phoenix saved this family. Karen leans forward. Everything I did was to protect what we built, something you'll never understand. The door opens. Daniel enters carrying a thick folder. Karen's composure cracks for just a moment. Hello, Mother, he says quietly. The FBI has some interesting questions about Maria. Karen goes very still. Who? My girlfriend, the one you had deported. Daniel sits beside me. Turns out her immigration papers were perfect until someone falsified evidence of fraud. Someone with access to Wellington Enterprise resources. You always were too soft, Karen says. Like your father. No, Daniel replies. I was just waiting. Like Valentina. I open the folder, spreading out documents. Bank statements, emails, death certificates. A pattern of destruction spanning decades. 15 families, I say. Not just my mother, not just the Harrisons. 15 lives you destroyed to build your empire. I built something lasting. Karen's voice hardens. What have you built except revenge? Justice. I push forward one final document. This is a confession, detailing everything. Sign it, and we ensure Ethan stays out of the investigation. Her eyes narrow. You'd use my son against me? Now who's becoming like me? The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. More than you gave any of your victims. The silence stretches. Through the observation window, I sense Ethan watching, though I haven't looked at him since he chose sides at the gala. You know what your mother said that night? Karen asks suddenly. She said she felt sorry for my children, that no amount of money could make up for having me as a mother. She laughs, bitter and sharp. And now here you are, proving her right. Sign the confession. Or what? You'll tell everyone what I am? She gestures around the cell. They already know. The mighty Karen Wellington, exposed and ruined. But tell me, Valentina, what are you, now that your revenge is complete? I stand, gathering the documents. Sign or don't sign, either way you've lost. Have I? Her smile returns. Look in the mirror, dear. You've become exactly what you hated. Calculating, ruthless, willing to sacrifice anything for your goals. I may have lost my empire, but I've created my greatest legacy. You. The truth of her words hits like a physical blow. I see myself reflected in the observation window, poised, controlled, every bit the person Karen trained me to be. "You're wrong," Daniel says, but I touch his arm. "No, she's right." I turn back to Karen. "You did shape me. You taught me how to play this game, but you forgot something crucial." "And what's that?" "My mother taught me something too." I reach for the door. "She taught me when to walk away." "That's it?" Karen calls after me. "All this plotting and you're just leaving?" "The confession is for the FBI now. Your fate is out of my hands." I pause at the threshold. "That's the difference between us, Karen. You needed to control everything. I just needed the truth." In the hallway, Ethan waits. He looks like he wants to speak, but no words come. "I'm sorry," I say, and mean it, for all of it. He nods, understanding what I can't say, that some victories cost too much, that some bridges can't be rebuilt. Behind me, I hear Karen calling for her lawyer. Always fighting, always controlling, until the very end. But her voice fades as I walk away, replaced by a memory of my mother's laugh, bright and free and finally at peace. Some revenge isn't about destruction at all. Sometimes it's about choosing to be something different than what they tried to make you. My mother's headstone looks different in the morning light. I've always visited at sunset, when shadows make everything feel heavier. But today, as I place fresh flowers beside her name, the marble gleams almost hopefully. "I thought I'd find you here." My father's voice steady and familiar. He sits beside me on the cool grass, his tie loosened from another day of rebuilding our company from the ashes of Wellington Enterprises. "The verdict came in," I say. He nods. 20 years for Karen, 15 for Marcus. "And the restitution payments to the families?" "Being processed. The Harrisons got their company back this morning." He pauses. "Daniel's doing good work, restructuring everything." The mention of Daniel brings thoughts of Ethan, but I push them away. Some bridges stay burned. "There's something else," my father says, pulling out an envelope. "They found this in Karen's private safe. It's addressed to you." The paper feels heavy in my hands. Inside, I find a photograph I've never seen before. My mother and Karen, both young, both smiling, standing in front of Mills Construction. "They were friends," my father says quietly, "before everything. Karen was different then. Ambitious but not cruel. Your mother saw the changes happening, tried to help her." He trails off. "Until Karen chose power over friendship. Until she forgot who she was." I study the photograph. These two women frozen in time before tragedy rewrote everything. "Did you know? All these years?" I suspected, but proving it meant risking losing you too. His hand finds mine. I couldn't take that chance. A text from Sophie lights up my phone. "Board meeting in an hour. Ready?" "Go," my father says. "Your mother would be proud of what you've built from all this. The Wellington building looks different now. Its imposing facade somehow less threatening." In the lobby, Lily greets me with coffee and updates about the transition. The elevator feels lighter as it carries me to the top floor. The boardroom is full when I enter. Daniel sits at the head of the table, no longer the uncertain younger son, but a leader in his own right. The other board members, mostly new faces, untainted by Karen's influence, nod in greeting. "Before we begin," Daniel says, "I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, this company was built on corruption. Yes, we're related to the people who caused immeasurable harm. But today, we start making it right." He gestures to the presentation screen where a new company name glows, Phoenix Mills Group. My breath catches. Daniel continues. "A joint venture between what's left of Wellington Enterprises and the restored Mills Construction. A chance to rebuild what was broken." The boardroom door opens. Ethan steps in, carrying architectural plans. Our eyes meet briefly, not with romance or regret, but with understanding. We're different people now, shaped by choices we can't undo. "The first project," Ethan says, spreading the plans on the table, "is a community development center, built on the land where Project Phoenix originally started. I study the plans, seeing echoes of both our mothers in the design. Strength and beauty, ambition and compassion balanced in glass and steel. There's one more thing, Daniel adds. He slides a folder toward me. We found evidence that Karen wasn't working alone 15 years ago. There were other board members involved in covering up what happened to your mother. My hand hovers over the folder. Inside lies more secrets, more corruption, more fuel for revenge. But I think of Karen in her prison cell, of how revenge consumed her long before it touched me, of how easy it would be to continue this cycle of destruction. I push the folder back. Send it to the FBI. Let justice handle it this time. Daniel nods, understanding. Ethan's shoulders relax slightly. Around the table, the board members exchange glances, respect, perhaps, or relief. The morning sun streams through the windows, catching on my engagement ring. I twist it off, placing it on the table, not as a gesture of defeat or victory, but as a choice to be something different than what pain made me. Now, I say, turning to the plans, let's build something lasting. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about creating something better from the ruins they left behind.
I stand at the edge of my own wedding reception, watching my new mother-in-law tap her crystal champagne glass. The sound pierces through the murmur of conversation, and my stomach knots. Something in Vivian's eyes makes me want to grab Ryan's hand and run. My name is Arya, and this should be the happiest day of my life. Ladies and gentlemen, Vivian's voice carries across the garden with practiced elegance. I'd like to propose a toast to the interesting couple before us today. She pauses, her smile sharp as a blade. When Ryan first brought Arya home, I must admit I was surprised. After all, we had such different expectations for him. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. Ryan's hand tightens around mine, but he says nothing. Always says nothing when it comes to his mother. But here we are, Vivian continues, her gaze fixed on me. Ryan, darling, you've always had a charitable heart, taking in strays, helping the less fortunate. Remember that mangy cat you insisted on keeping when you were 12? She laughs, and a few nervous chuckles follow. I suppose some habits never change. My cheeks burn. The pearl necklace Ryan gave me this morning feels like it's choking me. I catch my sister Sophie's eye across the room. She's half rising from her chair, fury written across her face. To the happy couple, Vivian raises her glass. May Ryan's generosity continue to lift up those who weren't blessed with the advantages he's enjoyed. And Arya, dear, she turns that razor smile on me again. Do try to remember where you came from and where you are now, Titita. The silence that follows is deafening. My father, Thomas, is gripping his chair so hard his knuckles have gone white. My mother, Linda, has tears in her eyes, not the happy ones she had during the ceremony. Ryan finally speaks. Mother, that's enough. But his voice is weak, uncertain. Oh, darling, I'm only teasing. Vivian waves him off. Surely Arya can take a joke. After all, she'll need a thick skin to survive in our world, won't she? I feel the eyes of 200 guests burning into me. The country club members, the business associates, Ryan's extended family, all watching to see how the girl from the wrong side of town will react to being publicly gutted. Actually, I hear myself say, standing up, my voice is steady, surprising even me. I'd like to thank Vivian for that illuminating toast. I raise my own glass. You've made things very clear. Vivian's smile falters for just a moment. She wasn't expecting me to speak. To new beginnings, I continue, and to finally understanding exactly where I stand. I drain my champagne in one go, setting the glass down with perhaps more force than necessary. The rest of the reception passes in a blur of forced smiles and whispered conversations that stop when I walk by. Ryan keeps apologizing, but his words feel hollow. He doesn't understand that his silence during his mother's speech said more than any apology could. Later, as we're leaving for our honeymoon, I catch Vivian speaking to Derek, her business partner. It's nothing personal, she's saying, but someone had to put her in her place before she got too comfortable. I slip into the car, my wedding dress rustling against the leather seats. Ryan starts the engine, already launching into another apology about his mother's behavior. But I'm not listening. Instead, I'm thinking about the look in Vivian's eyes during that toast, that mix of contempt and satisfaction. She thinks she's won, thinks she's shown everyone exactly who I am and where I belong. But she's wrong. That toast didn't break me. It awakened something. As we drive away from the reception, I'm already planning. Vivian wanted to show everyone who I am. Fine, I'll show her exactly who I can become. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of hers. The honeymoon glow lasted exactly 3 weeks. That's when the first oversight happened. My name mysteriously missing from the guest list at the Hamilton family's annual charity gala. It must have been a clerical error, Ryan says, adjusting his bow tie in our bedroom mirror. Mother's assistant is new. I watch him from the bed, still in my bathrobe, like the clerical error that left me off the country club membership application, or the one that forgot to include me in the family portrait session. He doesn't meet my eyes in the reflection. I'll talk to her about it. Don't bother. I stand up, letting my wedding ring catch the light. We both know Vivian's assistant doesn't make mistakes. The door closes behind him with a soft click. Through the window, I watch him pull out of our driveway in his Mercedes, a wedding gift from his mother. Another reminder of where I stand in the hierarchy of Vivian's world. My phone buzzes. It's Sophie. Mom and Dad want you over for dinner tonight. At my parents' modest house, the tension is thick enough to cut. Dad's pacing the kitchen, while Mom serves her signature lasagna, comfort food for uncomfortable conversations. She's isolating you, Dad says, his fork stabbing the pasta. First the wedding toast, now this. It's a pattern, Arya. Thomas, Mom warns, but her eyes are worried. What? We're all thinking it. That woman's trying to push our daughter out of her son's life, piece by piece. I push my food around the plate. Ryan says he'll handle it. Sophie snorts, like he handled the toast or the country club thing. She leans forward. You know what Derek told me at the coffee shop yesterday? I look up. You talked to Derek? He didn't know who I was, but he was meeting someone, talking about how Vivian's planning to protect the family interests by having Ryan sign some new trust agreement, something about limiting spouse access. The lasagna turns to ash in my mouth. Dad's face darkens, but before he can speak, my phone chimes. It's a group text from Vivian to the family. Reminder, Margaret's 75th birthday dinner this Saturday. Black tie. Private room at LeBlanc. Family only. A second later, another message. Ryan, darling, please come early to help with arrangements. No mention of me. Not even a pretense this time. That's it. Sophie stands up. You need to fight back. And do what? I push my plate away. Throw a fit? Prove her right about the classless girl who married above her station. No, Sophie's eyes gleam. You need to beat her at her own game. You're smart, Arya. Smarter than she thinks. Use that. Later that night, I return home to find Ryan in his study. Papers spread across his desk. He looks up, guilty. Hey, I was just going through some family business stuff. I lean against the door frame. The new trust agreement. He freezes. How did you? Does it matter? I walk over, picking up one of the documents. Were you going to tell me before or after you signed away my access to our shared future? It's not like that, he starts, but I cut him off. Then what is it like, Ryan? Explain it to me. Explain how your mother's systematic campaign to erase me from your life is not like that. He stands, runs a hand through his hair. You don't understand the pressure she's under, the family name, the business. You're right, I say quietly. I don't understand. I don't understand how my husband can watch his mother destroy his marriage and do nothing. I turn to leave, but his voice stops me. Where are you going? To get ready for Margaret's birthday dinner. But Mother said, I know what she said. I look back at him, and I'm done listening. In our bedroom, I open my laptop and start searching. Vivian thinks she can write me out of this family story. Fine, but two can play at that game. Sophie's right. I'm smarter than Vivian thinks. And if she wants to protect family interests so badly, maybe it's time I took a closer look at exactly what those interests are, starting with why Derek's been making monthly visits to offshore banks. Margaret's birthday dinner becomes a battlefield. The moment I walk into LeBlanc, Vivian's fez freezes mid-laugh, her champagne glass suspended in the air. The private dining room falls silent. Darling, she recovers quickly. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the guest list. I smile, channeling her own razor-sharp sweetness. No misunderstanding. I'm exactly where I should be. Margaret rises from her seat, her arthritis-twisted hands gripping her walker. Vivian, stop this nonsense. Arya is family now. Something flickers across Vivian's face. Pain, maybe fear. It's gone before I can be sure. Ryan pulls out my chair, but his hands are shaking. The tension crackling through the room makes the crystal chandelier seem ready to shatter. Actually, Margaret continues, settling back into her seat. This reminds me of another family dinner years ago, when you first brought Charles home, Vivian. Vivian's knuckles whiten around her glass. Mother, please. Your father's family treated you horribly, Margaret says, her voice carrying despite its age. Called you a gold digger, said you weren't good enough, remember? The revelation hits me like a physical blow. I look at Vivian, really look at her, and for a moment, I see something else behind the perfect makeup and designer dress, a shadow of another woman who once sat where I'm sitting. That was different, Vivian snaps. Was it? Margaret's eyes are sharp. You worked as a waitress. Charles came from old money. His mother tried everything to drive you away. Derek clears his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, Margaret cuts him off. Because I watched my daughter transform herself into exactly the kind of woman who once tried to destroy her. The waiter arrives with the first course, his professional smile faltering at the tension. Nobody touches their plates. I protected this family, Vivian says quietly, dangerously. Everything I've done, every sacrifice. Like the sacrifice of sending Charles's family those photos. Margaret's words land like bombs. The ones that ruined his father's political career. Ryan's head snaps up. What photos? Ancient history, Vivian stands abruptly and completely irrelevant. But I see it now. The blueprint of her success, the foundation of her power. She didn't just marry into this world. She conquered it, destroyed those who stood in her way. You're right, Mother. Vivian's voice has gone cold. I learned from the best, from those who tried to destroy me. And I learned well. She turns to me. So believe me when I say, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I pull out my phone, opening the offshore banking records I'd discovered. I think I do. The color drains from Derek's face. Vivian goes very still. Monthly transfers to the Cayman Islands. I continue. Strange patterns in the company's charitable donations. It's amazing what you can find when people think you're too stupid to look. You're making dangerous accusations, Derek warns. No, I correct him. I'm making observations. The accusations will come from the IRS if these records end up on their desk. Ryan stands up looking lost. What's going on, Mother? Nothing, Vivian says sharply. Your wife is trying to cause trouble, like always. Like you caused trouble for Charles's family? I press. Is that why he left? Because he discovered what you really are. The slap echoes through the room. My cheek burns where Vivian's hand connected, but I don't flinch. Mother, Ryan shouts, finally finding his voice. Margaret's quiet voice cuts through the chaos. You've become everything you once hated, Vivian. Vivian grabs her purse, her perfect composure cracking. This dinner is over. Derek, my office, first thing tomorrow. She pauses at the door, looking back at me. You want to play this game? Fine, but remember, I've been playing it longer. After she leaves, Ryan turns to me, his face a storm of confusion and anger. What have you done? What you wouldn't, I answer. I fought back. Margaret reaches across the table, her wrinkled hand covering mine. Be careful, dear. Revenge has a way of changing people. I should know. I watched it change my daughter. I looked down at the banking records on my phone, then at the door where Vivian disappeared. The woman who crawled her way up from nothing, who destroyed her enemies, who became the very monster she once fought. Is that what I'm becoming too? The suitcase lies open on our bed, half packed with whatever I could grab in 10 minutes. Ryan stands in the doorway, his face a mask I no longer recognize. So that's it? His voice is flat. You're running away? I fold another shirt, focusing on the crisp edges. Running implies fear. I'm choosing to leave. Because of what happened at grandmother's dinner, Mother apologized. No, I correct him. She sent a formal note through her secretary, expressing regret for any perceived impropriety. That's not an apology, that's damage control. The bedroom feels smaller than usual, like the walls are closing in. Through the window, I can see Vivian's car pulling up our driveway. Right on schedule. She's here to explain everything, Ryan says, about the offshore accounts, about Charles. Like she explained about the trust agreement you were going to sign? I zip the suitcase closed. Or about how she's been systematically pushing me out of your life. A knock downstairs. Ryan doesn't move to answer it. You're becoming just like her, he says quietly. The words hit harder than Vivian's slap ever did. I turn to face him fully. What? The investigating, the threats, the ultimatums. You're fighting her by becoming her. Before I can respond, Sophie appears in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Don't go anywhere. You need to see this. She pulls out her phone, pulling up an email. Remember how I said I'd look into Charles? Well, I found something big. The document on her screen is old, but clear enough. A newspaper article from 25 years ago. The headline reads, "Local business owner dies in suspicious car accident." That's Charles's father, Ryan says, moving closer. Read the date, Sophie urges. I do, then I read it again. This was 3 days after those photos Margaret mentioned, the ones that ruined his political career. Keep reading. The article mentions brake failure, a steep road, no witnesses, and at the bottom, a quote from the grieving family's spokesperson, Vivian Hamilton. She didn't just destroy his career, I whisper. We don't know that, Ryan interrupts. But his voice shakes. Another knock downstairs, more insistent this time. There's more. Sophie scrolls down. Guess who else died in a car accident with suspicious circumstances? The investigator who was looking into the campaign finance irregularities that those photos exposed. The room spins slightly. I sit on the edge of the bed, my packed suitcase forgotten. Arya, Vivian's voice carries up the stairs. We need to talk about this situation like adults. Ryan moves toward the door, but I grab his arm. Don't, please. He looks down at my hand, then at the article still displayed on Sophie's phone. For the first time, I see real fear in his eyes. What do you want me to do? He asks. Choose, I say simply. For once in your life, choose. Footsteps on the stairs. Sophie positions herself between me and the door. I can't just, Ryan starts. Yes, you can. Because if you don't, I'm walking out that door. And unlike Charles, I'll make sure I'm not alone on any steep roads. The footsteps reach our floor. Ryan looks at the door, then back at me. In that moment, I see every choice we've ever made, every compromise, every silence. And I realize this isn't just about saving my marriage anymore. It's about survival. Ryan? Vivian's voice is closer now. Darling, is she up here with you? Sheh. He takes a deep breath, and I watch my husband choose. No, mother, he calls out, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. She's not, and neither am I. He grabs my suitcase with one hand, my arm with the other. Sophie, is your car out back? She nods, a slow smile spreading across her face. Then let's go, he says, all of us. As we slip out the back door, I hear Vivian calling our names. But for once, she's not the one in control. For once, we're writing our own story. And this time I'm not running away. I'm running towards something much more dangerous. The truth. The motel room feels like a war room, with papers spread across every surface. Sophie types furiously on her laptop while Ryan paces, phone pressed to his ear. I'm staring at a photograph I found in Margaret's old albums, Vivian and Charles on their wedding day, looking young and in love, before everything went wrong. Derek's not answering. Ryan hangs up. But his secretary said he cleared his schedule for the next week. Emergency meetings with the board. Sophie looks up. They're moving money, fast. I've tracked 3 large transfers to different offshore accounts in the last hour. They know we know. Aita, still studying the photograph. There's something in Vivian's eyes. Even then, a hunger. My phone buzzes. A text from Margaret. Vivian's here, asking questions. Be careful. Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. Meet me at the old Hamilton factory, midnight. Come alone if you want the whole story. D. Ryan reads over my shoulder. It's a trap. Obviously, Sophie agrees. Derek's Vivian's puppet. Always has been. I set down the wedding photo. Maybe that's exactly why we should go. They both stare at me. We? Ryan asks. You and me. Sophie stays here, keeps tracking the money. If something goes wrong, I trail off, not wanting to finish the thought. If something goes wrong, I call Dad. Sophie completes it for me. He's got friends in the DA's office. They're already interested in those offshore accounts. Ryan grabs his keys. We should leave now, scout the location before. A knock at the door freezes us all. Through the thin curtains, we can see a familiar silhouette. Arya, Vivian's voice is honey sweet. Darling, I know you're in there. Let's talk about this like family. Sophie quietly closes her laptop. Ryan moves toward the bathroom window, our planned escape route. I brought something you might want to see, Vivian continues. About your father's construction company. Did you know he bid on Hamilton Properties contracts 3 years ago? Before you met Ryan? My blood runs cold. Dad never mentioned this. Such a shame about those anonymous complaints that killed the bid. Cost him nearly everything, didn't it? Would be terrible if history repeated itself. Ryan grabs my arm as I move toward the door. Don't, he whispers. But I'm already putting pieces together. The timing of Dad's near bankruptcy. The mysterious lost contracts. How convenient it was that Ryan met me just when my family was most vulnerable. 5 minutes, I say to Vivian through the door, alone. Arya, no. Sophie starts. I turn to them both. Get to the factory. I'll meet you there. And if I don't, I hand Sophie the wedding photograph. Look at her eyes. Really look. Then check the dates of every suspicious death around her. Not just Charles's father. The bathroom window slides open silently. As they slip out, I count to 10, then open the door. Vivian stands there, elegant as ever, holding a thick folder. Smart girl, she says, finally learning to negotiate. Show me. She hands over the folder. Inside, I find documents proving everything. How she orchestrated my father's financial ruin. How she positioned Ryan to meet me. How she planned it all, years ago. Why? I ask, though I already suspect the answer. Because I needed to know, she says simply. If you were strong enough, if you could survive what I survived, what I had to become, you destroyed my family to test me? She smiles, and I see that hunger from the wedding photo. Stronger now. I made you stronger, like Charles's family made me stronger. The weak don't survive in this world, Arya. I needed to know if my son's wife could survive. I think of the offshore accounts, the suspicious deaths, the years of manipulation. And if I fail your test? Oh, darling. She reaches out to touch my cheek. I force myself not to flinch. You already have. The question now is, what are you willing to do about it? I step back, clutching the folder. I guess you'll find out at midnight. Her smile widens. So Derek reached out. Good. Remember what I said about survival, Arya. Only one of us can. As she walks away, I look down at the folder in my hands. The evidence I needed, handed over freely. Too freely. That's when I realize this isn't just about survival anymore. It's about who's really being tested and who's really doing the testing. The old Hamilton factory looms against the midnight sky. A steel and concrete tomb holding who knows how many secrets. Ryan's hand finds mine in the darkness. We don't have to do this, but we do. Because somewhere in that building, Derek is waiting with answers about Charles, about Vivian, about all the convenient accidents that paved her way to power. The side door creaks open at our touch. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly green shadows across abandoned machinery. Our footsteps echo on metal catwalks. "Derek?" Ryan calls out. A figure emerges from the shadows, but it's not Derek. It's Margaret, leaning heavily on her walker. "Grandmother." Ryan steps forward. "What are you?" "I'm sorry," she whispers. "She made me choose." More shadows move. Security guards materialize from every corner. And there's Vivian, elegant even here, Derek at her shoulder, like a well-trained dog. "Family," Vivian's voice that carries across the factory floor. Such a complicated thing, isn't it? I grip the folder of evidence she gave me earlier. "Where's Sophie?" "Safe, for now." Vivian descends the metal stairs, each click of her heels like a gunshot. "Though that depends entirely on you." Ryan moves to shield me, but two guards grab his arms. "Mother, stop this. "Oh, darling," she sighs. "I'm trying to save you from becoming your father, from choosing weakness over strength." She turns to me. "Show them the folder, Arya." My hands shake as I open it, but the documents inside aren't what she gave me earlier. These are different. Photographs of my father accepting bribes, falsifying contracts, laundering money through his construction company. "No," I shake my head. "These are fake." "Are they?" Derek speaks up. "Or did you just never want to see the truth? About your father, about Ryan, about yourself?" "What's he talking about?" Ryan demands. Vivian produces another folder. "Your father didn't just bid on Hamilton contracts, Arya. He helped me destroy his competitors, helped me cover up Charles's father's accident, all to protect his own interests." She smiles. "Like father, like daughter. You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask him yourself." The factory door opens again. My father walks in, looking older than I've ever seen him. "Dad?" He won't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I did what I had to do, to protect us, to protect you." And now, Vivian continues, "You'll do what you have to do, to protect everyone." She hands me a USB drive, all the evidence of your father's crimes, and Ryan's involvement. "Yes, darling," she tells her son. "Those contracts you signed last year, not quite as clean as you thought." The pieces fall into place. The arranged marriage, the tests, the manipulation. We were never players in this game. We were pieces being moved across Vivian's board. "What do you want?" My voice sounds hollow. "Sign over your shares in the company. Admit to orchestrating the offshore accounts. Take the fall." She steps closer. "Or watch everything you love burn." "Don't." Ryan struggles against the guards. "Arya, don't." Tick-tock. Derek checks his watch. Sophie's waiting. And those photos of her with the corporate accounts? Very convincing. I look at my father, broken by his own choices. At Margaret, forced to betray her grandson. At Ryan, finally seeing the true cost of his family's legacy. "If I do this," I say slowly, "everyone else walks away clean?" "You have my word." Vivian offers a pen and papers. "Your word?" I laugh, and it sounds like breaking glass. "Like Charles had your word? Like his father had your word?" "Charles was weak," she snaps. "Like you're being weak now. Sometimes survival means sacrifice." I take the pen, feel its weight. Think about Sophie, about Ryan, about all the lives Vivian has destroyed in the name of survival. "You're right," I say. "Sometimes it does." I sign the papers, watch Vivian's triumphant smile, watch my father's shoulders slump in relief, and then I pull out my phone, press play on the recording of everything that just happened, and watch that smile fade. "You're not the only one who knows about sacrifice," I tell her. But before anyone can move, a shot rings out. Pain explodes in my shoulder. Through blurring vision, I see Derek lowering a gun, see Ryan breaking free, see Vivian's face transform from shock to something like respect. As darkness closes in, I hear her whisper, "Now we'll see who really survives." The hospital monitors beep steadily as I open my eyes. Ryan's asleep in the chair beside me, but Sophie stands at the window, phone pressed to her ear. "They're moving the board meeting up," she whispers. Tomorrow morning, they're going to vote on the merger before anyone can stop them. I try to sit up, wincing at the pain in my shoulder. Where's the recording? Safe, but Vivian's claiming it was taken under duress. And with Dad's involvement, she trails off. The door opens. Vivian walks in, immaculate as ever. Behind her, Margaret wheels herself into the room, her walker replaced by a wheelchair I've never seen before. Everyone out, Vivian commands, except Arya. Ryan stirs. I'm not leaving. Yes, you are, Margaret cuts in. Begin. Both of you, this ends now. After they leave, Vivian sits on the edge of my bed, studies me like a specimen under glass. You know what happened to Charles? She asks quietly. You killed him. No. She pulls out an old photograph. He killed himself after he discovered what his father had done. The embezzlement, the fraud, the lives destroyed. His precious moral code couldn't handle the truth about his family's legacy. So you covered it up. I protected what was mine. Her fingers trace the photograph's edge, like you tried to protect your recording. But there's something you should know about survival, Arya. It's not about who's strongest. The door opens again. Derek enters, but something's different. He's not carrying himself like Vivian's loyal servant anymore. Show her, Vivian commands. Derek hands me a file. Inside are documents spanning decades, all bearing Margaret's signature. Property transfers, bank accounts, death certificates. I don't understand. I start. My mother, Vivian's voice turns bitter, taught me everything I know about his survival, about power. She orchestrated Charles's father's accident, arranged my marriage, shaped me into what she needed me to be. She looks at Margaret's wheelchair outside the door, and now she's doing it again. The truth hits like another bullet. She's been playing us all. For years, Derek confirms. I've been reporting to her, not Vivian. Everything. The toast, the exclusion, the contracts, all designed to test both of you. But why? Because power without purpose is meaningless. Margaret wheels herself back in. And family without strength is doomed to fall. She looks at Vivian. I had to know if either of you were worthy of the legacy, if you could do what needs to be done. And now, I ask. Now we know. Margaret produces a gun, the same one Derek used. One of you walks out of here with everything. The company, the truth, the future. She places it on my bed. Choose. Vivian doesn't move, doesn't reach for the gun, just watches me with those hungry eyes. And suddenly, I understand. This isn't about survival. It's about breaking the cycle. I pick up the gun, point it at Margaret. You're right. Family without strength is doomed. I turn it toward Vivian. But strength without mercy is just another kind of weakness. Then I press play on my phone. Not on the factory recording, but on the conversation we just had. The full confession. Sophie's not the only one who knows how to hack phones, I say, as Margaret's face darkens. The board already has this, along with proof of every manipulation, every crime, every test. It's over. You fool, Margaret snarls. You've destroyed everything. No, Vivian stands slowly. She saved us from becoming you. She takes the gun from my hand, places it out of reach, from destroying ourselves. Security arrives minutes later. As they lead Margaret away, she calls back. You'll regret this, both of you. Some things are worth any price. She's right, Vivian says after they're gone. About the price. She looks at me with something like respect. Welcome to the family, Arya, the real one. I think of all the pain, all the manipulation, all the lives broken in the name of legacy and power. What happens now? Now, she smiles, but it's different. Tired, real. Now we learn how to survive without destroying each other. As she leaves, I notice she's left the old photograph behind. But now I see what I missed before. It wasn't hunger in her eyes back then. It was fear. The same fear I see in my own reflection now. The Hamilton estate sale draws a smaller crowd than expected. I watch from the second-floor window as strangers pick through generations of carefully curated power, reduced now to price tags and lot numbers. Vivian appears beside me, her reflection ghosting against the glass. Margaret's lawyer called. She's refusing visitors. Good. We stand in silence, watching an elderly couple examine a crystal vase, the one Vivian used for her wedding toast at my reception. The memory feels like it belongs to someone else. I found this in Charles's old study. Vivian hands me a leather-bound journal. You should read it. The pages smell of dust and secrets. Charles's handwriting fills each page with observation about his family's corruption, his growing horror at discovering the truth. The last entry is dated 3 days before his death. He was going to expose everything, I realize. Not just his father's crimes, but the whole system. And now you have. Vivian's voice carries no accusation, just tired acceptance. The board voted this morning. The company's being dissolved. Assets redistributed. Footsteps on the stairs. Ryan and Sophie, carrying boxes. My sister's eyes are red-rimmed, but her voice is steady. Dad's paperwork is all sorted. The DA's office is offering a deal. Take it, I tell her. All of it ends here. Ryan sets down his box, pulls out an old photograph album. Look what I found. The images tell a story I never saw before. Vivian as a young mother, teaching Ryan to walk. Margaret watching from the background, always watching. The slow transformation of a family into a fortress. We're selling the house, Vivian announces suddenly. All of it, starting fresh. Where will you go? I ask. She smiles, and for the first time, it reaches her eyes. There's a small town in Oregon. Charles talked about retiring there before everything. The elderly couple buys the vase. As they carry it out, sunlight catches the crystal, sending rainbow fragments dancing across the walls. I've been thinking about what Margaret said, I say quietly, about survival, about strength. And I think real strength is knowing when to let go. Ryan takes my hand. Outside, the last of the estate sale crowd is dispersing. Soon this house will be empty, its walls no longer echoing with decades of manipulation and fear. There's something else you should know, Vivian says, about your father's company. The contracts weren't all Margaret's doing. Some of them, I chose those targets myself, including your father. The admission should hurt more than it does. But looking at her now, I see something I never expected. Remorse. Why tell me this? Because survival isn't just about living through something, she says. It's about what you become while surviving. Sophie appears with more boxes, but stops short, sensing the moment. The four of us stand there, surrounded by the dismantled pieces of a dynasty built on fear and control. I found this too. Ryan pulls something from his pocket. My pearl necklace from our wedding day. Thought you might want it back. I take it, feel its weight. Then I walk to the window, open it, and let the pearls fall. They scatter across the driveway like drops of rain. Mother would call that wasteful, Vivian observes. No, I correct her. She'd call it weak, but she was wrong about a lot of things. Later, as the sun sets on the empty house, I find Charles's journal again. There's a line underlined near the end. The greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in refusing to become them. I leave the journal on Margaret's old desk. Let the next owners find it, or not. Some stories need to end for others to begin. As we lock up for the last time, Vivian pauses on the porch. You know she'll never stop, even from prison. Margaret will try to rebuild. Let her try, I say. We have something stronger than her kind of power now. What's that? I look at Ryan, at Sophie, at the woman who was my enemy and is now something else. Something complicated and real. The truth, I answer, and each other. We walk away from the Hamilton estate together, leaving behind empty rooms filled with echoes of vengeance. Some of them might follow us. Some might even catch up one day. But that's tomorrow's survival.
Numbers don't lie. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at my laptop screen, watching our joint account balance mock me with its glaring discrepancy. $50,000. Gone. Just like that, without a trace or explanation. I'm Layla, and until this moment, I thought I knew everything about my husband, Ethan. 12 years of marriage had taught me his habits, his tells, the way his left eye twitches when he's nervous. But nothing had prepared me for this. Hey, everything okay? Marcus poked his head into my office, his familiar concerned expression making me quickly minimize the banking window. "You missed the morning briefing." "Did I?" My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, trying to maintain composure. "Sorry, I got caught up in some calculations." Marcus stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Layla, you've been staring at your screen for the past hour. I can see your reflection in the window." I forced a smile, but my hands were shaking as I reached for my coffee mug. "It's nothing, just some personal stuff." "Personal stuff doesn't usually make you miss presenting the quarterly projections to the board." He leaned against my desk, his presence both comforting and intrusive. "Want to talk about it?" The mug trembled in my grip. "Ethan's been different lately, distant, and now I'm looking at our accounts and..." I stopped myself, shame burning my cheeks. "I shouldn't be discussing this at work." "Different how?" "Late nights, mysterious phone calls. Last week he claimed he was visiting his sister in Phoenix, but when I called her, I set the mug down before I could spill it. She hadn't seen him in months." Marcus's expression darkened. "Have you confronted him? He's got an explanation for everything. Always does." I pulled up the banking window again, pointing to the transaction history. "But numbers don't lie, right? $50,000, transferred to an account I've never seen before." "Jesus," Marcus whispered, leaning closer to examine the screen. "When did this happen?" 3 days ago, while I was at that conference in Boston." My phone buzzed on the desk, Ethan's face lighting up the screen. I let it ring. "You should answer it," Marcus suggested, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I shook my head. "Not until I figure out what I'm dealing with. I need to be smart about this." The phone stopped buzzing, only to start again immediately. This time, a text message appeared. "Need to talk. Important. Please call me back." E. "Whatever you decide to do," Marcus straightened up, heading for the door. "Just remember you've got people in your corner." After he left, I sat there staring at Ethan's message, my mind racing through possibilities, each worse than the last. The pharmaceutical company where I worked had strict policies about personal matters affecting professional performance. I couldn't let this situation spiral out of control. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. "Found us an amazing investment opportunity. We'll explain everything tonight. Love you." Investment opportunity. The words hit me like a slap. I remembered the last time he'd used that phrase. 3 years ago when he convinced his parents to refinance their house for a sure thing that ended up costing them their retirement savings. He'd sworn it wasn't his fault, that he'd been misled too. I'd believed him then. I opened my drawer and pulled out the business card Dr. Simmons had given me last month during Ethan's physical. "Call me if you need to talk," she'd said, with an odd emphasis I hadn't understood at the time. Maybe she'd seen something I'd missed. The office suddenly felt too small, too confining. I gathered my things, told my assistant I was taking a personal day, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Marcus watching me from his office, his expression unreadable. I had no idea then that this was just the beginning, that the missing money would be the least of my concerns. But something inside me had shifted, like a switch being flipped. The trust I'd built my marriage on was crumbling, and in its place, something darker was taking root. The drive to Dr. Simmons's office felt like navigating through quicksand. Every red light stretched into eternity, every turn bringing me closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. The business card sat heavy in my pocket, its edges worn from my constant fidgeting. Dr. Simmons's receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Harrison, doctors between patients. She said to send you right in when you arrived." The examination room smelled of antiseptic and secrets. Dr. Simmons stood by her desk, already waiting. "I wondered when you'd call," she said, gesturing to a chair. "How much do you know?" "About what?" My voice sounded hollow, even to me. She pulled out a file, hesitating before opening it. During Ethan's last visit, I noticed some inconsistencies in his medical history. Previous conditions that didn't match his records. What kind of inconsistencies? The kind that make me wonder if the Ethan Harrison in my office was the same Ethan Harrison from his previous medical records. She paused, studying my face. Have you ever verified his background? My phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. Where are you? We need to talk about the investment. Time sensitive. Dr. Simmons noticed my hands shaking. Layla, there's something else. The prescription he requested last month. The office door opened. A nurse poked her head in. Doctor, your next patient is here. Give me 5 minutes, Dr. Simmons replied, then turned back to me. Listen carefully. Don't confront him yet. Get copies of all your financial documents first. And Layla, check the name Richard Thorne. Back at work, I couldn't focus. Marcus stopped by twice, but I barely registered his concerned looks. My computer screen blurred as I typed Richard Thorne into various search engines. Nothing significant appeared until I added fraud to the search. A newspaper article from 6 years ago showed a grainy photo of a man being led away by police. The image quality was poor, but something about the slope of his shoulders, the way he held his head. My office phone rang, startling me. Layla speaking. Hey, it's Sophie. Your sister's been trying to reach you. Something about Ethan showing up at her place. My blood ran cold. What? Lily said he was asking weird questions about your family's assets, claiming he needed the information for some kind of surprise for you. She felt uncomfortable. When was this? Yesterday afternoon. She tried calling you, but... I hung up, already dialing Lily's number. It went straight to voicemail. A knock at my door made me jump. Marcus entered, closing the door behind him. Board meeting in 10 minutes, but first, you need to see this. He placed a document on my desk, a copy of an email chain. This came through the company's compliance department. Someone's been accessing our confidential research data using your login credentials. That's impossible. The access points trace back to your home IP address. Late night hours when you're usually asleep. The pieces started falling into place. Ethan's late nights at home, his sudden interest in my work computer, the missing money. My stomach churned. I've delayed reporting this, Marcus continued, his voice low. But if there's something going on, I need to get home. I stood up, gathering my things. Tell them I'm sick. Layla, wait. Marcus caught my arm. Let me help. Whatever's happening. You can't. I pulled away, but his grip tightened slightly. At least let me drive you. You're shaking. In the parking lot, my car wouldn't start. The engine made a sickening grinding noise before falling silent. Marcus insisted on checking under the hood and found several cables deliberately disconnected. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, coming home early. Big news about our future. Everything's falling into place. I showed Marcus the message. His jaw tightened. You're not going back there alone. I have to. If he suspects I know anything. I trailed off, remembering Dr. Simmons' warning. Then we need a plan. Marcus pulled out his phone. I know someone in corporate security. Give me an hour. As we sat in his car, plotting my next move, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow. Harder, more determined. The trust I'd lost wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. The garage door was open when Marcus dropped me off. My car, the one that wouldn't start earlier, sat in the driveway, pristine and seemingly untouched. Ethan leaned against it, phone in hand, wearing that disarming smile that used to make my heart skip. There you are, he called out. You wouldn't believe the day I've had. The investment's locked in. We're looking at triple returns within 6 months. I felt Marcus's car idling behind me, his presence a silent guardian. The car's working now. Had Tom take a look at it. Simple fix. Ethan gestured toward our neighbor's house. You worry too much, honey. Tom appeared in his driveway, giving me an awkward wave. Something in his expression made me uneasy. Weird coincidence, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Those cables must have come loose on their own. Marcus's car finally pulled away. The sound felt like abandonment, Inside, Ethan moved with unusual energy, pulling papers from his briefcase. Look at these projections. The returns are guaranteed. We just need to move quickly. Maybe liquidate some of your pharmaceutical stocks. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Call me now, emergency. I need to use the bathroom, I said, already moving toward the stairs. Ethan's hand caught my wrist. This can't wait, Layla. The opportunity expires tonight. I pulled away, forcing a smile. 5 minutes. In the bathroom, I called Lily. She answered on the first ring. He knows, she whispered. About Dr. Simmons, about everything. He was here again, asking about your trust fund. When I wouldn't tell him, Her voice cracked. The things he said about you, about our family. Are you safe? Sophie's picking me up, but Layla, there's more. I found something when he was here, a phone, not his regular one. There were messages about. The line went dead. My hand shook as I tried calling back. Nothing. Downstairs, Ethan's voice carried up the stairs. He was on the phone. Yes, everything's proceeding as planned. She suspects nothing. No, that won't be a problem much longer. I crept closer to the stairs, straining to hear. The sister's becoming an issue. Yes, I understand. It'll be handled. No, Richard Thorne doesn't exist anymore. I made sure of that. My foot hit a creaky floorboard. The conversation stopped abruptly. Layla? Ethan called out. You've been up there a while. Everything okay? I flushed the toilet, buying time. When I came downstairs, he had a glass of wine waiting. Your favorite, he said, holding it out. I remembered Dr. Simmons's words about his prescription requests. Actually, I'm not feeling well. Maybe we should discuss this tomorrow. His smile tightened. The opportunity expires tonight, remember? Just take a sip, relax, and let me handle everything. The doorbell rang. Through the glass panels, I saw Marcus. What's he doing here? Ethan's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Probably about the board meeting I missed. I moved toward the door, but Ethan blocked my path. You've been spending a lot of time with your manager lately. It's work-related, like those late-night emails from the company server. His mask slipped for a moment, revealing something cold beneath. You should be more careful with your passwords, honey. The doorbell rang again. 3 sharp, urgent rings. Don't answer it. Ethan's command was soft but absolute. My phone buzzed again, a text from Sophie. Lily's safe, police involved, get out now. Move, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Or what? He stepped closer, his familiar cologne now suffocating. You'll tell them about Richard Thorne? About the missing money? Who do you think they'll believe? The loving husband worried about his unstable wife, or the woman making wild accusations? The wineglass in his hand trembled slightly. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't sure how much I knew. The front door crashed open. Marcus stood there with 2 police officers, Tom right behind them, clutching what looked like security camera footage. I'm sorry, Tom said, looking at Ethan. I couldn't do it anymore. Not after what you asked me to do to her car. The wineglass shattered on the floor, dark red spreading like blood across our pristine white tiles. In that moment, watching Ethan's carefully constructed world begin to crumble, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Chen pushed another cup of coffee across the table while I replayed the security footage Tom had provided. On the screen, Ethan methodically disconnected my car's cables, his movements precise, practiced, not the clumsy work of an amateur. Mrs. Harrison, Detective Chen said, we found something interesting in your neighbor's garage. Want to tell me about these? She slid photographs across the table. Surveillance equipment, far more sophisticated than anything Tom could afford. Next to them, printouts of my daily schedule, annotated in Ethan's familiar handwriting. I've never seen these. Your neighbor claims Ethan paid him to install them 3 months ago. right around the time your company started clinical trials on the new cancer drug. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. The timing wasn't a coincidence. There's more. She produced a laptop. Your sister's phone was recovered. The contents are concerning. The video played. Ethan in Lily's living room, his charm turned predatory. Your sister's always been the smart one, hasn't she? Figuring things out too quickly. But accidents happen, Lily, especially to people who ask too many questions. My hands clenched until my nails cut into my palms. I want to press charges. That's the thing. Detective Chen closed the laptop. We can't find him. His fingerprints match 3 different identities in our database. Richard Thorne is just one of them. A knock interrupted us. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. They found something at the office. In the elevator up to our floor, Marcus kept glancing at me. You should prepare yourself, he said finally. My office door hung open. Inside, forensics teams photographed my decimated workspace. My computer was gutted, hard drive missing, but worse were the walls, covered in photographs. Me sleeping, shopping, meeting Dr. Simmons, having lunch with Marcus. He's been watching me for months, I whispered. Not just you. Marcus pointed to a stack of papers on my desk. These were hidden in his cloud storage. He's been selling company research to competitors, using your login credentials. The room spun. The clinical trials. Compromised. The board's meeting now to discuss damage control. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. The text contained only an image. Lily's house. Current timestamp. Lights on inside. He's there, I said, showing Marcus. He's at my sister's house right now. Police are on their way, Detective Chen called from the doorway. Don't. But I was already running, Marcus close behind. In the parking garage, he grabbed my arm. You can't go alone. He's my husband. My responsibility. Was your husband, Marcus corrected. And he's not working alone. Think about the resources needed for this level of surveillance. Someone's backing him. Another text arrived. A video of Lily entering her house, unaware she was being filmed. Below it, words that made my blood freeze. Should have taken the wine, honey. Marcus's keys jangled between us. I'm driving. The 15-minute drive to Lily's house felt endless. Marcus broke every speed limit while I tried calling her. No answer. There's something you should know, Marcus said, turning onto her street. The board meeting today, it wasn't just about the trials. Someone's been accessing restricted files about our pharmaceutical patents. Files only accessible from your home network. Understanding hit like a physical blow. The investment opportunity he kept pushing was never about money. It was about access. We turned the corner to Lily's house. Every light blazed, but her car was missing. In the driveway stood Sophie, frantically waving us down. She's not here, Sophie called out as we approached, but he left this. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a single photograph, Ethan and me on our wedding day. On the back, in his handwriting, you really should learn to trust your husband, Layla. Now everyone pays the price. My phone buzzed one final time. A video. Lily tied to a chair, terror in her eyes. Behind her, Ethan's voice. Ready to discuss those patents now, honey? The screen went black, leaving only my reflection, a woman I barely recognized anymore. The time for playing victim was over. Ethan wanted to see how far I'd go to protect what's mine. He was about to find out. Call Detective Chen, I told Marcus, already heading back to the car. Tell her to meet us at the office. I know where he's taking her. The abandoned research facility loomed before us, its darkened windows reflecting the last rays of sunset. Marcus killed the engine, but I was already moving, Dr. Simmons's voicemail replaying in my head. Layla, I found his original medical records. The man you married, he's done this before. 3 times. The wives all disappeared. Security cameras tracked our approach. Good, let him see me coming. You realize this is exactly what he wants, Marcus said, matching my stride. He's counting on you being emotional, making mistakes. He has my sister, and a team of corporate spies backing him. The police are 15 minutes out. We should wait. You don't have to come. His hand caught my arm. That's not what I meant. The key card I'd stolen from Ethan's desk months ago still worked. The door clicked open, releasing stale air and memories. This was where we'd first met, where he'd charmed his way into my life with that perfect smile and carefully crafted backstory. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly shadows. Our footsteps echoed through empty corridors until a familiar voice cut through the darkness. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my own wife's perfume? Ethan's voice came through the PA system, distorted but unmistakable. Third floor, honey, just like our first date, remember? Marcus reached for his phone. I stopped him. No signal, he's jamming it. Layla. The concern in his voice made me pause. What aren't you telling me? Before I could answer, a scream pierced the silence. Lily. We ran toward the stairs, but the sound of a door slamming stopped us. Through the window, I caught glimpse of movement in the parking lot. He's playing us, Marcus realized. Splitting us up. Another scream, closer this time. Marcus hesitated, torn between following me and checking the parking lot. Go, I said. I know where he's keeping her. The third-floor laboratory still smelled of chemicals and broken dreams. This was where our company's failed cancer drug had been developed, where millions had been lost, where Ethan had first accessed our research. Lily sat tied to a chair in the center of the room, duct tape across her mouth. Behind her, screens displayed security footage of the building, including Marcus heading toward the parking lot. The famous big sister coming to the rescue. Ethan emerged from the shadows, holding something that made my blood freeze. My old research notebook. You know what I found interesting about your early trials? The unreported side effects, the deaths you covered up. Let her go. This is between us. Is it? He flipped through the notebook. Your sister was so helpful, telling me where you kept your backup data. All those years of falsified research hidden away in a safety deposit box. Imagine the board's reaction when this leaks. Lily's muffled protest drew my attention. Her eyes weren't showing fear anymore. They were trying to tell me something. You're not the only one who can play detective, honey. Ethan's smile turned cruel. Did you really think Marcus was helping you out of the goodness of his heart? Ask him about Project Eclipse. Ask him who really authorized those failed trials. Movement behind Ethan caught my eye. A reflection in the darkened windows. Marcus, gun raised. You destroyed everything I built, I said, keeping Ethan's attention. My marriage, my career, my family. No, sweetheart, you did that yourself. I just exposed the truth about who you really are. He moved closer, notebook extended like a peace offering. But we can still fix this. Together. Just like before. The gunshot shattered the silence. But Ethan didn't fall. Instead, Marcus crashed through the door, blood spreading across his shirt. Sorry, honey. Ethan's smile never wavered. Didn't I mention? Your friend Tom's been very cooperative since we found those tax fraud records. Lily's chair toppled as she fought against her restraints. Marcus lay motionless. And something inside me, something I'd kept caged since discovering that first missing payment, finally broke free. I lunged for the notebook, but Ethan was faster. As we grappled, his phone clattered to the floor, revealing an open email. Project Eclipse termination authorized. Eliminate all witnesses. The implications hit harder than any physical blow. This wasn't just about stealing research or ruining my life. This was about silencing everyone who knew the truth. And I had just led Marcus right to him. Marcus's blood stained my hands as I pressed against his wound. Behind me, Lily had worked one hand free, but Ethan's attention was fixed on his phone, reading something that made him laugh. You know what's funny? He held up the screen. Your sister just got copied on every illegal trial document you ever signed. The board, the FDA, even those grieving families. They'll all know exactly who covered up those deaths. He's lying, Marcus gasped, his voice barely audible. Layla, the trials weren't your fault. Ethan's smile widened. Tell her, Marcus. Tell her who really ordered those experimental treatments, who falsified the consent forms. The laboratory lights flickered, casting strange shadows across Marcus's paling face. I had to protect the company, he whispered, but I never meant for anyone to die. The truth hit like physical pain. All those patients, all those families seeking answers, and I'd helped hide it. My signature on every document, trusting Marcus, trusting the system. There it is. Ethan circled us slowly. That moment when you realize everyone's been lying to you, even your white knight here. Lily's chair creaked as she worked at her restraints. Through the windows, distant sirens wailed. Too far away, too late. But I'll make you a deal. Ethan set my research notebook on a nearby bench. Give me access to Project Eclipse's complete data, and this stays buried. Your sister keeps her career. Marcus might even survive, and those families never learn the truth. Don't, Marcus coughed, blood staining his lips. Project Eclipse. It's not what you think. Ethan's phone chimed. He glanced at it, his composure cracking slightly. Time's running out, honey. The board's emergency meeting starts in 20 minutes. Once those documents hit their inbox, a crash from the hallway made us all jump. Footsteps approached. Heavy, multiple sets. That'll be my associates, Ethan said. Less understanding than me, I'm afraid. Last chance. My hands were slick with Marcus's blood as I helped him sit up. The access codes, he whispered. Don't. Shut up. Ethan kicked him hard. You've manipulated her enough. The footsteps grew closer. Through the laboratory's glass walls, shadows moved in the corridor. I trusted you, I told Marcus, my voice breaking. All those patients. The real data, he gasped. Safety deposit box. Explains everything. Ethan checked his watch. 10 seconds, Layla. Choose. Lily had worked the duct tape loose enough to speak. He's bluffing, she said. The email he showed you, check the timestamp. I lunged for Ethan's discarded phone, but he was faster. The screen shattered as he smashed it against the floor. Wrong choice. He nodded toward the door as 3 men in tactical gear entered. Take care of them. Make it look like a lab accident. Wait. I stepped forward, hands raised. The backup server. In the basement. I can give you everything. Ethan studied my face, searching for deception. You're lying. Check my keycard access logs. Why do you think I came here? The men looked to Ethan for instructions. In that moment of hesitation, Lily's chair finally toppled. She rolled free, kicking the notebook into a puddle of spilled chemicals. The laboratory erupted into chaos. As Ethan lunged for the notebook, I grabbed for his phone's remains. Marcus slumped against me, his breathing shallow. Kill them all, Ethan ordered, but his voice held a new edge. Desperation. The tactical team raised their weapons. Through the broken phone screen, I saw the email timestamp Lily had noticed. It was dated next week. He's using you, I told them. Project Eclipse isn't what he promised. Shoot them, Ethan screamed. But the men hesitated, looking at each other. In their moment of uncertainty, distant voices echoed through the building. Police, finally arriving. Ethan pulled out a gun. Fine, I'll do it myself. The shot echoed like thunder. Marcus slumped in my arms, no longer breathing. Lily screamed. And something inside me, the last trace of the woman who had once loved this monster, died with Marcus. I looked up at my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time. You want to know about Project Eclipse? Follow me. As I led them toward the basement, Ethan's gun pressed against my back. I realized there was no going back. Whatever happened next would destroy us all. And maybe that was exactly what we deserved. The basement's emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows. Ethan's gun pressed between my shoulder blades as we descended, his mercenaries flanking us. Above, police sirens grew louder, but we all knew they'd be too late. The server room's through here, I said, swiping my keycard. Nothing happened. I tried again. Stop stalling." Ethan's voice had lost its smooth charm, revealing something rawer beneath. "You really think I didn't disable your access? Then shoot me." I turned to face him. "Because that's the only way you're getting what you want." His laugh echoed off concrete walls. "Always so dramatic, like when you threatened to expose the trial deaths. But you didn't, did you? Because deep down, you're just like me." A door slammed somewhere above us. The mercenaries exchanged glances. "Sir," one said, "we need to move." Ethan pulled out his phone, showing me the screen. A video feed of the upstairs lab. Lily still there, now with a guard standing over her. "Last chance, honey. The real Project Eclipse data, or your sister joins Marcus." I took a step closer, close enough to smell his cologne, the same scent I'd once found so intoxicating. "You want to know the truth about Project Eclipse?" His eyes narrowed. "The backup server doesn't exist." I smiled, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. "But the safety deposit box does. The one Marcus mentioned. I visited it this morning." The first flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Behind him, one of the mercenaries touched his earpiece, listening to something. "You were so focused on the trial data," I continued. "You never asked why Marcus kept protecting me. Why he really hired me all those years ago." "Sir," the mercenary interrupted, "we've got movement on multiple floors." "Shut up!" Ethan's composure cracked further. "What are you talking about?" Project Eclipse wasn't about the drug trials. It was about identifying corporate spies, like the ones who killed Marcus's wife 5 years ago, the ones you're working for. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by fear. "You're lying." "Check your phone again. That video feed of Lily. It's a loop from 20 minutes ago." He glanced down. In that moment, I moved. The gun went off, the shot deafening in the confined space. But I was already rolling, my hand finding the emergency alarm panel Marcus had shown me months ago. The sprinklers activated, but instead of water, chemical foam poured down. The mercenaries' equipment sparked and died. "Clear." Sophie's voice echoed from the stairwell as she led a tactical team in. The real one, the one Marcus had arranged before everything went wrong. Ethan lunged for me, but slipped in the foam. His gun clattered away. "You don't understand," he gasped. "They'll kill me." "Like you killed Marcus? Like you killed those other wives?" He reached for something in his jacket. I didn't hesitate. The syringe I'd palmed from the upstairs lab found his neck, just like he'd planned for me. "What?" His eyes widened as recognition hit. "The trial drug. A dose large enough to show every side effect you helped cover up." I watched him slump against the wall. "Don't worry. You'll live. Long enough to experience everything those patients did." The tactical team secured the mercenaries. Sophie appeared beside me, helping me up. "Lily's safe. The real Project Eclipse data is already with the FBI. And the board meeting, streaming live. They've seen everything, including Ethan's real identity and his connection to the corporate espionage ring." I looked down at my husband, the man I'd loved, the monster I'd married. He stared back, his handsome features already showing the first signs of the drug's effects. "You were right," I told him softly. "I am just like you. The difference is, I chose justice over revenge." As they led him away, his screams echoing through the basement, I felt no satisfaction. Only a hollow emptiness where love had once lived. Sophie touched my arm. "Marcus left something for you, in case things went wrong." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a single note. Project Eclipse was never about the data. It was about finding someone strong enough to finish what my wife started. "Thank you." The sirens grew closer as we climbed the stairs, leaving the basement and its secrets behind. But the echoes of what happened there would haunt us all forever. Some vengeance, I realized, comes not from what we do to others, but from what we force them to face in themselves. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me as I approached Ethan's room. Through the observation window, I watched him thrash against his restraints, his once handsome face contorted by the drug's effects. the same effects he'd helped hide from those trial patients. Dr. Simmons stood beside me, reviewing his charts. The symptoms will persist for months. Every one of them documented now, impossible to deny. And the others? I asked. His previous wives? 2 have been found alive, in witness protection. She hesitated. The third? I turned away from the window. I don't want to know. The click of heels announced Sophie's arrival. The board just finished reviewing Marcus's complete files. Everything about Project Eclipse, the corporate espionage ring, even records of his wife's murder. He'd documented it all. He knew, I said softly, from the moment Ethan started working there, and he chose you to finish it. Sophie handed me a USB drive. This was in his safety deposit box, along with a letter for you. Through the window, Ethan's eyes found mine. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd loved, or thought I'd loved. Then his face twisted in another spasm of pain. The FBI wants your statement, Sophie continued, about the trial cover-ups. I'll give them everything. I pocketed the drive without looking at it. The patients' families deserve to know the truth. A commotion down the hall drew our attention. Lily appeared, accompanied by 2 federal agents. They found Tom, she said. He's agreed to testify about Ethan's network. I watched my sister, noting how she held herself differently now, stronger, more assured. We all carried scars from this, but maybe they'd made us harder to break. Mrs. Harrison, a nurse approached. He's asking for you. Inside the room, the restraints creaked as Ethan struggled to sit up. Come to enjoy the show? His voice was raspy, barely recognizable. No. I stayed by the door. I came to return something. I placed our wedding ring on his bedside table. He stared at it, then laughed. A horrible, broken sound. Still so righteous. But we both know the truth. You enjoyed it, didn't you? Watching me suffer? That makes you just like... No, I cut him off. It makes me nothing like you. Because I'm walking away. His laughter stopped. They'll never believe you about the trials. You signed off on them too. Maybe, but unlike you, I can live with the consequences of my choices. As I turned to leave, he called out, I did love you, you know, in my way. I paused at the door. That's the difference between justice and revenge, Ethan. Justice doesn't care if you loved me. Outside, Lily and Sophie waited. Behind them, through the hospital windows, the sun was setting over the city. Marcus's letter burned in my pocket, still unopened. What now? Lily asked. I watched a young couple pass by, their hands intertwined, faces bright with trust and possibility. Once, that had been me, but the woman I was then died in that basement, alongside the lies she'd built her life around. Now, I said, we tell the truth, all of it. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Simmons. Found something in Ethan's original medical records. We need to talk. I deleted it without reading further. Some truths could wait. Some secrets deserve to stay buried, at least for now. You're not going to look at the drive, are you? Sophie asked as we walked away. Marcus knew what he was doing, I replied. Whatever's on it, that's tomorrow's battle. The hospital doors slid open, releasing us into the evening air. Somewhere in the city, federal agents were unraveling Ethan's network. Families were finally learning the truth about their loved ones' deaths. And in a quiet cemetery, Marcus's wife's case was being reopened. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't a single act of revenge. It was a chain of consequences, each link forged by our choices, our secrets, our lies. And sometimes, the hardest part wasn't achieving it, but living with what it revealed about ourselves. I felt the weight of Marcus's letter, the mystery of the drive, the unread message from Dr. Simmons, tomorrow's battles, tomorrow's truths. For now, this was enough. Walking away, letting the echoes of vengeance fade into something quieter, something that felt almost like peace. Almost. The call came during a board meeting. My phone vibrated against the conference table, drawing irritated glances from my colleagues. I normally silence it completely, but something made me keep it on vibrate that day. Maybe some part of me knew. I excused myself, heels clicking against marble as I stepped into the hallway. The caller ID showed Detective Morrison. My stomach dropped before I even answered. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Detective Morrison with the Metro Police Department." I leaned against the wall, my free hand pressed flat against the cool surface. "Yes?" "I'm sorry to inform you that your husband Eric has been in an accident." The word accident hung in the air like smoke. I'd later learn how carefully chosen that word was, how much it concealed. "Is he—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Mrs. Thompson, I need you to come down to Memorial Hospital. There are some questions we need to ask. I'm Penny, and that call shattered my carefully constructed world into jagged pieces that would never quite fit back together. The drive to the hospital exists in my memory as disconnected fragments, red lights bleeding into each other, the radio playing something upbeat and meaningless, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The emergency room reeked of disinfectant and despair. Detective Morrison met me at the entrance, a tall woman with tired eyes and a notebook that seemed to hold secrets she didn't want to share. "Your husband's car went off Highway 16 around noon," she said, leading me down a fluorescent-lit corridor. "The initial investigation suggests mechanical failure, but..." "But what?" She stopped walking. "The brake lines were cut, Mrs. Thompson." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Cut? You mean—" "We're treating this as a potential homicide." I remember laughing then, a harsh, broken sound that made a nearby nurse glance over in concern. "That's impossible. Eric was, just a businessman. Who would want to—" The detective's expression shifted slightly. "Mrs. Thompson, we've found some concerning documentation in your husband's car. Financial records, threatening emails. Does the name Marcus Blackwood mean anything to you?" I shook my head, but something clicked into place. All those late-night phone calls Eric had been taking lately, the way he'd been distracted and jumpy. "I need to see him," I said. "Mrs. Thompson." Her hesitation told me everything. "Please." She led me to a room where Eric lay covered by a sheet. I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I noticed absurd details. His wedding ring catching the harsh hospital lights, a small cut above his left eyebrow that looked fresh, as if it might still be bleeding. "We'll need you to make a formal identification," Detective Morrison said softly. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. Eric's mother Maggie would need to be told, and Cassie, his sister. My father would want to come over, despite his wheelchair making it difficult. But beneath all these practical thoughts, something darker was taking root. Someone had killed my husband. Someone had deliberately sent him off that road to his death. And in that sterile hospital room, standing over the body of the man I loved, I made a promise. I would find out who did this, and they would pay. My phone buzzed again. Maggie's name flashed on the screen. Of course she'd heard already. She always knew everything first. I let it ring, watching until the screen went dark. Some decisions change everything. Standing there, I chose not to answer that call, and that choice would set in motion events I couldn't possibly have predicted. Because sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the sharpest knives. Maggie's house loomed before me, all polished brick and manicured hedges. I sat in my car, watching shadows move behind the curtains. 3 missed calls from her already today. The 4th one would be in person. The front door opened before I could knock. Maggie stood there in a black designer dress, her face a masterpiece of controlled grief. "Finally," she said, pulling me inside. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. Where have you been?" The foyer smelled of lilies, Eric's favorite. Of course, she'd already ordered flowers. "I was at the hospital, Maggie. Then the police station." "The police?" Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. "What are they saying about my boy?" I studied her face, searching for something genuine beneath the performance. "They're saying it wasn't an accident." Cassie appeared at the top of the stairs, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. For once, her expensive clothes looked rumpled, lived in. "What do you mean, not an accident?" "The brake lines were cut," I said, watching both their faces. Maggie's hand tightened on the banister. Cassie's eyes widened. "That's ridiculous," Maggie snapped. "Who would want to hurt Eric? He was beloved in the community. Unless—" She turned to me, eyes narrowing. "What have you done to protect my son's interests lately, Penny? All those late nights at the office? Were you even paying attention to what was happening?" "Don't you dare," I said, my voice low. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me." "Mother," Cassie interrupted, descending the stairs. "This isn't helping." "No," Maggie's voice rose. "Then what would help, Cassandra? Because my son is dead, and someone needs to answer for that." She turned back to me. "We need access to the business accounts. Everything. Eric always said it was a family business." "Eric said a lot of things," I replied, "but legally, I'm his next of kin. And until we know what happened, everything stays locked down." "You can't do that." Maggie stepped closer, her carefully constructed facade cracking. "That business was built with Thompson money. Our money. You're just an outsider who Eric chose to marry," I cut in, "who he trusted with everything." "Did he?" Cassie asked quietly. Something in her tone made me turn. She was holding her phone, screen glowing in the dimness of the foyer. "Because I have some interesting emails here that suggest otherwise." My stomach clenched. "What emails?" "Eric was planning changes," Cassie said, glancing at her mother. "Big ones. Maybe that's why someone wanted him dead." "Show me," I demanded. "All in good time," Maggie interrupted. "Right now, we need to focus on arrangements. The funeral needs to be perfect. Eric deserves that much." "The police haven't released his body yet," I said. "They're still investigating." "Investigating what?" Cassie's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "What exactly did Eric tell you about his business dealings, Penny?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about the detective's words, Marcus Blackwood, the name I didn't recognize, but they clearly did, judging by the look that passed between mother and daughter. "I think," I said carefully, "that we all need to be very honest about what we know." "Honest?" Maggie laughed, a brittle sound. "My dear, you wouldn't know what to do with honesty if it slapped you in the face. Now, about those accounts." "No." I moved toward the door. "You'll hear from my lawyer." "Penny," Cassie called after me. "The emails, you should really see them." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "Send them to me." Outside, the evening air felt thick with unspoken threats. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassie. "There's more to this than you know. Meet me tomorrow, alone." I got in my car, watching the house in my rearview mirror. Maggie stood at the window, her silhouette rigid with fury. Beside her, Cassie raised her phone to her ear, speaking urgently to someone. The game had begun, and I was already several moves behind. But as I drove away, one thing became crystal clear. Someone in that house knew exactly why Eric died, and I was going to find out who. The emails arrived at 3 a.m. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, Eric's words glowing accusingly in the darkness of our bedroom, our former bedroom. "The deal with Blackwood is worse than we thought. If Mother finds out what we've done..." I kept reading, each message revealing more layers of deception. Eric and Cassie had been working together, planning something big, something that terrified them both. My father's voice crackled through the phone. "Penny, it's nearly dawn. You should sleep." "Dad, I need your help understanding these financials." I switched to speaker, spreading papers across the bed. Eric was moving money around, lots of it, but the numbers don't add up. "You're good with numbers," he said. "Better than Eric ever was." "That's just it." I stared at a particularly suspicious transfer. "These aren't amateur mistakes. Someone knew exactly what they were doing." A knock at the door made me freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Cassie, mascara-stained and trembling. "I couldn't sleep," she said when I opened the door. "And there's something you need to see." She pulled out a USB drive, turning it over in her manicured hands. "Eric gave me this the day before he..."
before the accident. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got it. Why didn't you mention this at the house? Mother was watching. Cassie's voice cracked. She's always watching. Penny? My father's voice came through the phone. Who's there? It's Cassie, I said, studying her face. Dad, I'll call you back. I plugged in the drive. Cassie paced behind me, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. Files populated the screen. Contracts, emails, photos. One folder was simply labeled MB. Marcus Blackwood, Cassie whispered. Mother's old friend, the one who helped start the company. The photos showed Eric and Blackwood in heated discussion outside a restaurant. The timestamp was 3 days before the accident. Eric was going to expose him, Cassie said, the whole operation. But Mother... A car door slammed outside. Cassie rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. She's here. God, she followed me. Maggie Thompson strode up the walkway, her face set in lines of fury. I grabbed the USB drive, but Cassie caught my wrist. Wait, she hissed. There's something else you need to know. About the brake lines. The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the tension like a knife. Cassie went rigid, her fingers digging into my arm. Don't, she whispered. Please, she'll... The doorbell rang again, followed by pounding. Cassandra, Maggie's voice carried through the door. I know you're in there, both of you. I moved toward the door, but Cassie blocked my path. You don't understand. The company, the money, it's all built on lies. Eric found proof. Found proof of what? Tears streaked her makeup. That Mother killed. The sound of a key in the lock silenced us both. I spun around as the door swung open, revealing Maggie with a spare key, Eric's key, in her hand. Well, she said, her smile sharp as broken glass. Isn't this cozy? A little late-night conspiracy? How dare you use his key, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Oh, darling. Maggie stepped inside, her heels clicking like bullets on the floor. Everything that was Eric's is family property now, including whatever my daughter just gave you. She held out her hand expectantly. Behind her, through the open door, I saw a man standing by a black car. Even in the darkness, I recognized him from the photos, Marcus Blackwood. Cassie saw him too. She made a small, frightened sound. The drive, Maggie demanded. Now. I clutched it tighter, feeling the edges dig into my palm. In that moment, I understood something terrible. This wasn't just about Eric's death anymore. This was about something much older, something buried deep in the Thompson family's past. And Maggie would do anything to keep it there. I slipped the USB drive into my boot while backing away from Maggie. Get out of my house. Your house? She laughed, a sound like breaking ice. Everything here belongs to the Thompson family, including whatever secrets you think you've discovered. Blackwood appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the room with something cold and calculating. Margaret, perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Eric left everything to me. The house, the business. The business? Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. My dear, you have no idea what you're involved in. Cassie moved between us, her hands trembling. Marcus, please. This isn't what Eric would have wanted. Eric, he said softly, made several unfortunate decisions near the end. Decisions that needed correction. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. I reached for my phone, but Maggie was faster. Looking for this? She held up my cell phone. You really should be more careful about leaving things lying around. A text message flashed on the screen. From Detective Morrison. My stomach lurched as Maggie read it aloud. Found something in Eric's office. Meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. How interesting. She pocketed my phone. It seems we're not the only ones asking questions. Mother, Cassie whispered, don't do this. Do what, darling? Protect our family? Maggie's voice hardened. Like I protected you after that incident with the Martinez contract. Cassie went pale. You promised never to. Promises, I cut in. Like the promise Eric made about the Blackwood deal. Something shifted in Blackwood's expression. What exactly did Eric tell you? Enough. I moved toward the kitchen, where I kept a second phone hidden in a drawer. Enough to know why he was meeting with federal investigators the week before he died. Maggie's composure cracked. You're lying. Am I? Check the USB drive. I watched their faces carefully. Oh, wait, you can't, because I already sent copies to my lawyer. It was a bluff, but it hit home. Blackwood grabbed Maggie's arm, whispering something urgent in her ear. Penny, Cassie said suddenly, the painting in Eric's office. Did you ever look behind it? Maggie slapped her. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. That's enough, I snapped, but Cassie was already laughing, a high, hysterical sound. You can't keep it hidden forever, she said, touching her reddened cheek. Eric found the real ledgers. He knew what you did to Dad. The room went silent. Maggie's face drained of color. What about your father? I asked carefully. Nothing, Maggie cut in. Cassandra is confused. Marcus, perhaps you should take her home. I'm not confused, Cassie said, her voice stronger now. Tell her, Mother. Tell her how Dad really died. Blackwood moved suddenly, but I was already running for the kitchen. I heard glass breaking, Cassie screaming, Maggie shouting orders. My fingers found the spare phone just as heavy footsteps approached. I texted Detective Morrison. Thompson House, now. Murder confession incoming. The kitchen door burst open. Blackwood stood there, his expensive suit incongruous with the violence in his eyes. The ledgers, he said quietly. Where are they? Where you'll never find them. Another bluff, but I was starting to piece it together. Eric's father's accident years ago, the company's sudden success afterward, Eric's desperate investigation in his final days. From the other room, I heard Cassie's voice, raw with years of buried truth. She killed him, Penny. She killed them both. Blackwood lunged forward just as police sirens wailed in the distance. In the chaos that followed, one thought crystallized with terrible clarity. Eric hadn't just been investigating fraud. He'd been unraveling a decades-old murder, and it had cost him everything. Now I had to finish what he started, or I'd be next. Detective Morrison's office felt like a cage. I paced while she reviewed the USB files, each click of her mouse marking another second we were exposed. Mrs. Thompson, she said finally, these records go back 20 years. Are you certain about Marcus Blackwood's involvement? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Liam. Third call today. I sent it to voicemail. Eric's father didn't die in an accident, I said. According to those files, Maggie and Blackwood orchestrated it. The company was failing, but the insurance payout saved it. And you believe they did the same to your husband? The door opened. Another detective entered, whispering something in Morrison's ear. Her expression darkened. Your father-in-law's case was ruled an accident, she said carefully. Reopening it would require substantial evidence. A familiar voice cut through the room. Liam stood in the doorway, holding a thick manila envelope. Like these? Morrison frowned. This is a closed meeting, Mr. Carter. I'm Mrs. Thompson's attorney now. He placed the envelope on the desk. And these are the original ledgers from the Thompson Company, the ones Eric found behind that painting. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. How did you... Eric contacted me the day before he died, Liam said quietly. He knew they were watching him. Asked me to keep these safe. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You knew, all this time. Penny, don't. I backed away from both of them. You let me stumble around in the dark while you had proof. I was trying to protect you. Liam reached for my arm. If Blackwood knew you had these, like he knew Eric had them. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Did you tell them? Is that why they were ready for him that day? Morrison stood. Mrs. Thompson, if you're suggesting... My phone buzzed again. Cassie's text made my blood freeze. Mother knows about the ledgers. Dad's old cabin. Come alone or they'll hurt Robert. I have to go, I said, grabbing my purse. Penny, wait. Liam blocked the door. You can't trust Cassie. She's been working with them. How would you know that? I studied his face, seeing it clearly for the first time. Unless... He didn't deny it. Everything I did was to keep you safe. Safe? I laughed, the sound brittle and strange. My husband is dead. My father's being held hostage. And you've been playing both sides this whole time. Morrison moved toward her phone. I'm calling for backup. No. I pulled out my gun. Eric's gun, found in his office safe. No one calls anyone. Liam's eyes widened. Put that down. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I backed toward the door. For the first time, I understand exactly what needs to be done. Penny, please. The ledgers stay here, I told Morrison. Evidence for both murders. But I'm going to that cabin. It's a trap, Liam said softly. Of course it is. I kept the gun steady. But unlike you, I don't abandon family. I left them there, Morrison reaching for her radio, Liam calling my name. The drive to the cabin stretched before me, dark and winding, like the path that had led to this moment. Eric had died trying to expose the truth. Now his mother was threatening my father, using him as bait, and Liam, the one person I thought I could trust, had been manipulating everything from the start. The gun felt heavy in my purse. I'd never fired one before, but as I drove toward the mountains, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead brought a strange calm. I was ready to use it, because sometimes justice and revenge are the same thing. The cabin loomed ahead, a dark shape against the mountain sky. Dad's wheelchair tracks marked the gravel. They'd dragged him inside. My hands tightened on Eric's gun as I approached. Cassie opened the door before I knocked. You shouldn't have come. Where is he? She stepped aside, revealing the cabin's interior. Dad sat in his wheelchair by the fireplace, Maggie standing behind him. Blackwood lounged in an armchair, looking almost bored. Penny, Dad said, his voice steady despite the bruise darkening his cheek. You need to leave. No one's leaving, Maggie announced. Not until we sort this out like family. Family? I kept the gun hidden behind my purse. Is that what you call murdering your husband? Your son? Blackwood straightened. Careful, Mrs. Thompson. Accusations like that can be dangerous. Eric knew, I said, about the insurance fraud, the offshore accounts, everything. Eric was naive, Maggie snapped, just like his father, always wanting to do the right thing, never understanding what it takes to build something lasting. Movement caught my eye. Cassie inching toward a desk drawer. Don't, I warned, finally revealing the gun. Maggie laughed. Do you even know how to use that? Want to find out? Penny, Dad's voice carried a warning. This isn't you. No? I stepped closer to Maggie. Maybe it is now. Maybe this is what happens when you kill someone's husband and threaten their father. I didn't kill Eric, Maggie said softly, but I know who did. The cabin door creaked. Footsteps behind me. Hello, Penny. Liam's voice hit me like a physical blow. I spun, keeping the gun raised, but he already had his weapon trained on me. You followed me. I've been following you since Eric died, he said, making sure you didn't get too close to the truth. The truth? My laugh sounded hysterical even to my own ears. That you're working with them? Working with them? Liam shook his head. Penny, I own them. Who do you think Marcus Blackwood really works for? The room tilted. Memories flashed. Liam's convenient appearances, his careful guidance of my investigation, always steering me toward Maggie and away from... The rival business, I whispered. It was you all along. Eric found out, Cassie said quietly. That's why he contacted the FBI, but Liam got to him first. Shut up, Maggie hissed. No, Mother, I'm done lying. Cassie moved toward me. Eric was trying to protect us all, from him. Liam's smile turned cruel. And now history repeats itself, another Thompson making the same mistake. The ledgers, I said. Detective Morrison has them. Detective Morrison works for me. He stepped closer. Everything works for me, Penny. That's what Eric never understood. That's what got him killed. Dad's wheelchair squeaked as he tried to move. Blackwood pressed him back. You loved me, I said, gun shaking. All those years pretending to be my friend. I did love you, still do. Liam's expression softened. That's why I'm giving you a choice. Put down the gun, sign over the company, walk away with your father, and live. Or join Eric. His weapon didn't waver. Your choice. Time seemed to freeze. Dad's eyes met mine, filled with a lifetime of lessons about right and wrong. Cassie stood trembling, her loyalty finally clear, but too late. Maggie watched with the desperate look of someone seeing their carefully built world crumble. And Liam, the man I'd trusted, who'd held me while I cried over Eric's death, waited for my surrender. I lowered the gun slowly. Smart girl, he said. Then everything happened at once. Dad threw himself forward, wheelchair crashing into Blackwood. Cassie screamed. A shot rang out, and I realized that sometimes the only way to end a nightmare is to wake up shooting. The gunshot echoed through the cabin. Liam staggered back, red blooming across his shoulder. My aim wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Dad's wheelchair had knocked Blackwood off balance, giving me the split second I needed. You stupid girl, Liam snarled, raising his weapon again. Cassie tackled him from behind. They crashed into the desk, sending papers flying. His gun skittered across the floor. The FBI is already coming, I said, keeping my weapon trained on him. The real FBI, not your corrupt agents. Liam laughed through gritted teeth. You're bluffing. Eric wasn't just gathering evidence against you. I moved closer, finger steady on the trigger. He was building a network, people ready to act if anything happened to him. Penny, Maggie's voice shook, he'll kill us all, like you killed your husband. I didn't take my eyes off Liam. Or did you just watch while he did it? Mother didn't know, Cassie said, backing away from Liam. Not about Dad. Not about Eric. Liam threatened to expose her fraud if she didn't help him take over the company. Blackwood lunged for Liam's fallen gun. Dad's cane cracked across his wrist. Stay down, Dad ordered, his teacher's voice cutting through the chaos. Both of you. Sirens wailed in the distance. Liam's face twisted into something inhuman. You have no idea what you've done, he spat. The people I work for will abandon you, I finished, just like you abandoned Eric when he begged for his life. His eyes widened. How did you... The cabin has security cameras. I nodded toward the corner. Eric installed them after someone broke in last year. They've been recording everything. Including your confession, Cassie added. Liam moved faster than I thought possible, producing a hidden blade. He grabbed Maggie, pressing steel against her throat. One last choice, Penny, he said. Let me walk out of here, or watch your mother-in-law die. Maggie trembled in his grip. Despite everything, despite her own crimes, I saw real fear in her eyes. Eric always said you were smart, Liam continued. Be smart now. Lower the gun. I did. Good girl. He backed toward the door, dragging Maggie with him. Maybe I did love you in my way. I loved you too, I said softly. That's why I'm sorry about this. The taser hit him from behind. Detective Morrison stood in the doorway, weapon raised. Federal agents, she shouted as her team swarmed in. Everyone on the ground. Liam collapsed, taking Maggie down with him. Blackwood tried to run, but didn't make it 2 steps. You okay? Morrison asked me later, as paramedics checked Dad's injuries. I watched them lead Liam away in handcuffs. He didn't look back. Eric knew, I said. He knew Liam would come after me next. That's why he left all those breadcrumbs, hoping I'd follow them to the truth. And the security footage. Uploading to the FBI server as we speak. I turned to where Cassie sat with Maggie. They helped in the end. When it mattered, they'll still face charges for their role in the fraud. Good. I felt nothing but exhaustion now. Justice should be blind, right? Morrison smiled slightly. Your husband would be proud. I thought of Eric, of his determination to expose the truth no matter the cost, of his faith that I would finish what he started. The company, I said. What happens to it now? That's up to you. She handed me a card. When you're ready, we'll talk about rebuilding. The right way this time. Dawn was breaking as we left the cabin. Maggie and Cassie were led to separate cars, their futures uncertain, but their secrets finally exposed. Dad waited in the ambulance, strong despite everything. And somewhere, I hoped, Eric could rest, knowing his death hadn't been in vain. The gun felt heavy in the evidence bag. I'd never have to use it again, but its weight would stay with me. A reminder that sometimes justice requires more than just truth. It requires courage to pull the trigger. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in summer. I watched Liam being led away in chains, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange. He didn't look back this time either. 10 to 20 years, Morrison said, joining me. Plus, whatever they add for Eric's murder once the forensics come back. I nodded, thinking of the security footage that sealed his fate. And Maggie? 5 years, reduced for cooperation. Cassie gets probation. Morrison studied my face. You okay with that? Eric would be. I turned away from Liam's retreating figure. He always said Cassie was just trying to survive their mother. Inside the building, Dad waited with the company paperwork. The restructuring had been his idea, turning the Thompson business into a foundation for supporting whistleblowers and fraud victims. Ready? He asked as I approached. Almost. I walked past him to where Cassie sat alone on a bench, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler, more honest. She looked up as I stopped before her. I never thanked you for the cabin. You chose the right side in the end. Did I? She twisted her hands together. Sometimes I think if I'd been braver sooner, Eric might still be alive. We all think that. I sat beside her, but Eric left us a way to make it right. I handed her the foundation paperwork. Her eyes widened as she read. Co-director? She shook her head. Penny, I can't. Eric believed in second chances, in rebuilding things the right way. I stood. Don't prove him wrong. Dad smiled as I rejoined him. That was good of you. That was justice. I signed the final papers, feeling the weight of the past months lift slightly. Different from revenge, like you always said. The elevator dinged. Maggie emerged between two officers, headed for processing. Our eyes met briefly. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of her manipulations and masks. I loved him, she said as they led her past. In my way. I know. I watched her go. That's what makes it tragic. Outside again, Morrison handed me one last item. Eric's phone, finally released from evidence. There's a video, she said quietly, from the night before he died. You should watch it. Later, in Eric's office, my office now, I pressed play. His face filled the screen, tired but determined. Penny, if you're seeing this, I failed. But I knew you'd finish it. You're stronger than all of them. Stronger than me. He paused, smiling that crooked smile I missed so much. The company was never about money. It was about helping people, making things better. I know you'll do that. And Penny? Don't let what they did make you hard. Don't let my death become your prison. The screen went dark. Through the window, I could see the city stretching out, full of possibilities and pitfalls. The Foundation's first meeting was tomorrow. Cassie would be there, bringing her knowledge of the dark side of business. Dad would watch proudly as we built something new from the ashes of betrayal. My phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. They'd found more of Liam's victims, other companies he'd infiltrated and destroyed. The Foundation would help them too. I placed Eric's phone in the desk drawer, next to the gun I'd never fired again after that night. Both reminders, but of different choices. The office door opened. Dad rolled in with takeout bags. Thought you might be hungry. Always taking care of me. That's what family does. He set out the food. The real kind, not the kind that demands loyalty through fear. I joined him, thinking of Eric's words. Don't let my death become your prison. You know what else family does? I asked, grabbing a container. They build things together. Outside, the sun set on the Thompson building, its shadow stretching long across the city. Tomorrow, those shadows would begin to shrink, making way for something brighter, something better, just like Eric always wanted.
The scent hit me first, a delicate mix of jasmine and something else I couldn't quite place. Not my perfume. Not anything I owned. It clung to Mason's dress shirt like an accusation, faint but unmistakable as I stood in our laundry room. Frozen with the fabric pressed against my face. I'm Trinity, and until this moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was, a devoted wife living what I believed was a charmed life with my husband of 8 years. But that unfamiliar fragrance changed everything. "Hey, what's taking so long with my shirts?" Mason called from upstairs. His voice carried that slight edge of impatience I'd grown accustomed to lately. "Just sorting colors," I answered, proud of how steady my voice remained. I dropped the shirt into the washer like it had burned me, then added extra detergent. Part of me wanted to obliterate that scent, while another part wanted to preserve it as evidence. "I need the blue one for tomorrow's meeting," he said, footsteps approaching. I quickly closed the washer lid and turned to face him. Mason filled the doorway, all 6 feet of him radiating the confidence that had first drawn me to him. His dark hair was slightly disheveled from running his hands through it, a habit when he was working late on his laptop. Which seemed to happen more and more these days. "The blue one's still at the cleaners," I lied, watching his face carefully. "I'll pick it up first thing tomorrow." He frowned, checking his phone. "You should have told me earlier. I needed that shirt." "Sorry," I said, the word tasting bitter. "I've been distracted lately." "Clearly." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, Jessica called. She's having some financial troubles and needs a place to stay for a while." My stomach clenched. His sister had always treated our home like her personal hotel, coming and going as she pleased. "For how long?" "However long she needs," Mason replied, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "She's family." Family. The word echoed in my head as he walked away. I waited until his footsteps faded before pulling out my phone and opening the banking app. Our joint account showed several recent restaurant charges at places I'd never been to, all during those late nights he claimed to be working. The washer hummed behind me, washing away evidence I should have photographed. But I knew that perfume would haunt me, a ghost of something I couldn't yet prove but felt in my bones to be true. I scrolled through our photos from last month's anniversary dinner. Mason's smile looked genuine as he raised his glass to 8 years together. Had he been lying even then? The Mason in that photo seemed like a stranger now, wearing a mask I'd somehow never noticed before. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Can't wait to catch up, sis. See you tomorrow." Face blowing a kiss. I stared at those cheerful emojis, remembering how she'd always sided with Mason during our rare arguments. How she'd laugh off my concerns about his late nights. "You're so paranoid, Trinity," she'd say. "Mason works hard for you both." The washer clicked into its spin cycle, and I made a decision. I opened my browser and typed, "How to track a cheating spouse." Then I deleted it and wrote instead, "Best private investigators in the area." Upstairs, Mason's voice drifted down as he took another call, speaking too softly for me to make out the words. But I didn't need to hear them. That perfume had already told me everything I needed to know. The question now wasn't whether my husband was faithful, it was what I planned to do about it. I saved 3 investigator numbers in my phone under innocuous names: yoga studio, book club, and dentist. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls. But tonight, I had to prepare for Jessica's arrival and pretend everything was normal. I was getting good at pretending lately. Maybe too good. The washer beeped its cycle complete. I transferred the clothes to the dryer, handling that blue shirt last. The perfume was gone now, but its memory lingered like a promise of things to come. Jessica arrived like a hurricane, 3 designer suitcases trailing behind her as she swept through our front door. Mason carried them upstairs while she collapsed onto our couch, her perfectly manicured hand draped across her forehead. You wouldn't believe the nightmare I've been through, she sighed. My landlord is such a monster. Who evicts someone just because they're a few months behind on rent? I busied myself in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. How many months exactly? Oh, who keeps track of these things? Jessica waved dismissively. Mason said I could stay as long as I need. You don't mind, right, Trinity? The knife clicked against the cutting board as I chopped vegetables for dinner. Each slice felt deliberate, therapeutic. Of course not. Your family. Mason returned, immediately gravitating toward his sister. I put you in the guest room overlooking the garden. Best view in the house. You're the best brother ever, Jessica cooed. Then, eyeing my cooking preparations, oh, are we eating in? I was hoping we could try that new bistro downtown. The one you mentioned, Mason? My knife paused mid-chop. Which bistro is that? Just some place near the office, Mason answered quickly. Nothing special. Jessica's eyes widened slightly before she covered with a laugh. Well, anywhere's better than cooking at home. No offense, Trinity. None taken. I scraped the vegetables into the trash. Let me change. Upstairs, I called the first investigator on my list, speaking in hushed tones. How soon can you start surveillance? We can begin tomorrow, the woman replied. But it's not cheap. I glanced at my personal savings account, the one Mason didn't know about. That won't be a problem. At the bistro, I watched Mason and Jessica share private jokes and meaningful glances. They'd always been close, but something felt different now. When the waiter arrived, Mason ordered without consulting me. The usual for me, he said, then added, and my wife will have the salmon. Actually, I interrupted, I'll have the steak. Rare. Jessica's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. Since when do you eat red meat? People change. I met her gaze steadily. Sometimes they're not who we think they are at all. Mason's phone buzzed. He checked it under the table, his expression shifting subtly before he excused himself. Work emergency. Won't be long. As soon as he was out of earshot, Jessica leaned forward. What's going on with you lately? Mason says you've been acting strange. Does he? I took a slow sip of wine. And what else does Mason tell you? He's worried about you. We both are. Her concern would have seemed genuine if I hadn't noticed her eyes darting toward the direction Mason had gone. You seem different. Different how? Suspicious. Defensive. She reached across the table to pat my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. Mason works so hard for you. You should be grateful. Grateful, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. Through the restaurant's window, I caught a glimpse of Mason outside, his phone pressed to his ear, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at me in months. Yes, grateful. Do you know how many women would kill to have a husband like him? I watched as Mason paced, running his fingers through his hair, his tell when he was excited about something. Or someone. I'm starting to wonder if they already do. Jessica's face hardened for a moment before smoothing back into concerned sister-in-law mode. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, Mason returned, tucking his phone away. Sorry about that. Where were we? Just girl talk, Jessica chirped, but her eyes held a warning when they met mine. I smiled and raised my glass. To family, I said. And all their little secrets. Mason's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Jessica's laugh came a beat too late. And in that moment, watching them both squirm, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it had company, a cold, calculating clarity about what needed to be done. The investigator would start tomorrow. But tonight, I had a front row seat to their performance, and I intended to study every act. The investigator's photos arrived in my encrypted email at 3 a.m. My hands trembled as I scrolled through them on my phone, each image a knife twisting deeper. Mason and a woman, tall, elegant, confident, sharing intimate moments outside an upscale apartment building. His hand on her lower back. Their faces close, laughing. A kiss that looked anything but casual. I zoomed in on her face. She was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache, not because of her looks, but because of how happy Mason looked beside her. I hadn't seen that expression on his face in years. "Can't sleep?" Jessica's voice made me jump. She stood in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in an expensive silk robe. I locked my phone. Just checking work emails. At 3 in the morning? She opened the fridge, the light casting harsh shadows across her face. "Mason mentioned you've been acting strange lately." Distant. Did he? I kept my voice neutral. "When was this?" "Earlier today, while you were at the gym." Jessica poured herself water, studying me over the rim of her glass. "He's worried about you." The lie settled between us like poison. I'd never left for the gym. I'd been following Mason to his other life, watching him play house with the woman I now knew was named Avery Thompson. According to the investigator's report. "How thoughtful of him to notice," I said. Jessica set down her glass with deliberate care. "He notices more than you think." "I'm sure he does." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Especially at that bistro downtown." Her expression flickered. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." I headed for the stairs, then paused. "Jessica? How long have you known about Avery?" The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. In the silence that followed, her face told me everything I needed to know. "Trinity, I don't." My voice came out steady, surprising us both. "Just clean up your mess. You're good at covering things up, aren't you?" The next morning, I waited until Mason left for work, before following him again. This time, I watched him enter a coffee shop where Avery waited. Through the window, I saw him slide into the booth beside her, not across from her. Intimate. Familiar. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica, "We need to talk." I ignored it, watching as Mason pulled out a small jewelry box. Avery's face lit up as she opened it, and even from across the street, I could see the diamond catch the light. My own wedding ring felt like it was burning my finger. Another text, "Please, Trinity. It's not what you think." I switched off my phone and walked into the coffee shop. The bell above the door chimed cheerfully as I approached their table. Mason's back was to me, but I saw the exact moment Avery noticed me, her smile faltering, her eyes widening in recognition. "Hello, Mason," I said. He froze, then turned slowly. The color drained from his face as he looked between Avery and me. "Trinity? What are you doing here?" I smiled at Avery, who was staring at my wedding ring. "I thought it was time I met the woman my husband's been having dinner with at that bistro downtown. The one Jessica's been helping him cover up." "Mason?" Avery's voice shook. "What is she talking about?" He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Avery, I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut in. "How you've been living two lives. Or how your sister's been helping you juggle them?" The jewelry box sat open between them, the diamond ring inside catching the light just like my wedding ring had 8 years ago. The symmetry would have been poetic if it wasn't so painful. "Trinity, please," Mason started, but I was already turning away. "Enjoy your coffee," I said. "And Avery? That ring?" He gave me the same one. Down to the cut and setting. "He's not just a cheater, he's an unoriginal one." I walked out, leaving chaos in my wake. Through the window, I saw Avery stand up, tears streaming down her face. Mason reached for her, but she jerked away, grabbing her purse and rushing past me outside. My phone had 7 missed calls from Jessica. I turned it back on and texted her one word, "Checkmate." My parents' house looked exactly as it had when I left 8 years ago, right down to the crooked welcome mat I now stood on. Finger hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, Mom opened the door. I saw you from the window 10 minutes ago, she said, pulling me into a hug. How long were you planning to stand there? The familiar scent of her lavender perfume broke something inside me. My shoulders shook as she held me tighter, not asking questions, just waiting. Dad appeared in the hallway, his reading glasses perched on his head. Who's at the Trinity? His expression shifted from surprise to concern. What did he do? I followed them into the kitchen, where Mom's half-finished crossword puzzle sat next to a cooling cup of tea. Such normal things. My life had stopped feeling normal the moment I found that perfume on Mason's shirt. You should see your face when we mention him, Dad said quietly. Like you're bracing for impact. I placed the manila envelope from the investigator on their kitchen table. Mom reached for it, but I caught her hand. Are you sure you want to see? She squared her shoulders. If you're strong enough to live it, we're strong enough to know it. The photos spilled across their floral tablecloth, Mason and Avery's documented affair laid bare. Mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw the jewelry box picture. Dad's face darkened with each image. Jessica knew, I said. She's been covering for him. Living in our house, watching me search for answers she had all along. That little, Dad started, but Mom touched his arm. What do you need from us, sweetheart? The question caught me off guard. Everyone else had told me what to do, how to feel. Mason with his gaslighting, Jessica with her dismissive concern, even the investigator with her professional advice about gathering evidence. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to burn everything down. Show everyone what he really is. But another part wants to protect him still, Mom finished. Because that's who you are. A protector. I don't want to be that person anymore. Dad gathered the photos, stacking them precisely. Then don't be. But choose who you become next carefully. Revenge might feel good now, but it burns both ways. My phone buzzed, Avery's number. The investigator had included it in her report, but I hadn't expected her to contact me. The text read, "Can we meet? There's more you need to know." She's reaching out, I showed them the message. Mason's other. I don't even know what to call her. Victim? Accomplice? Fellow survivor, Mom suggested. Maybe you both need answers. Or maybe it's a trap, Dad countered. Mason finding another way to manipulate you. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. What if it's both? What if everything's both now, truth and lies, justice and revenge? Mom reached across the table, her wedding ring catching the light, 40 years of faithful marriage glinting against my 8 years of lies. Then you choose your truth. Your justice. Not what Mason deserves, but what you need to heal. My phone buzzed again. Jessica, Mason's telling everyone you're having a mental breakdown. Please come home before you do something you'll regret. The threat was clear, wrapped in concern like all their manipulations. But sitting in my parents' kitchen, surrounded by genuine love and support, the message lost its power to wound. I typed back, "You're right. I am coming home. And I'm bringing the truth with me." To Avery, I wrote, "Tomorrow. 2 p.m. You pick the place. Are you sure about this?" Dad asked, watching me gather the photos. No, I admitted. But I'm sure about one thing, I'm done being the only one carrying these secrets. Mom hugged me again at the door, slipping something into my pocket. Later, in my car, I found her old house key on a new keychain. The message was clear, I had a safe place to land when everything exploded. And things were about to explode. Mason and Jessica had written this story for years. Now it was my turn, and I was choosing a different ending. Avery chose a small cafe across town, far from Mason's usual haunts. I arrived early, watching her through the window as she settled into a corner booth. She looked different now, less polished, more real. The engagement ring was gone. "I brought something you should see," she said as I sat down, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, property records, and what looked like business contracts. Mason isn't just lying about his relationships. My coffee arrived, but I couldn't take my eyes off the documents. Numbers jumped out at me, large transfers, hidden accounts, properties I'd never heard of. How did you get these? I'm a financial analyst. When things didn't add up, I started digging. Avery's hands trembled slightly as she pointed to specific transactions. He's been moving money around, creating shell companies. Your signature is on some of these documents. No, it's not. Then I saw it. My signature, perfect in every detail, on papers I'd never seen. He forged these? With Jessica's help. She's not just his sister, she's his business partner. The cafe's warmth suddenly felt stifling. Every memory of Jessica's financial troubles took on a new, darker meaning. They're using my identity for fraud. Among other things. Avery glanced around before lowering her voice. There's more. I found evidence they've done this before, with other women. It's their pattern. My phone buzzed, Mason asking where I was. I ignored it. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm their next target. The engagement, the joint venture proposals, it's all part of their scheme. She pulled out one final document. And because yesterday, I found this. It was a life insurance policy in my name, recently updated. The beneficiary had been changed to Mason, and the coverage amount had tripled. They're planning something, Avery said. Something big. And soon. I stood up abruptly, needing air. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too normal, for the darkness spreading through my thoughts. Avery followed. Trinity, wait. We need to. To what? Go to the police? Tell them my husband and his sister are running some elaborate con? That they might be. I couldn't finish the sentence. We have evidence now. Real evidence. Another text from Mason, Jessica says you took some files from my office. We need to talk. I showed Avery the message. They know. Then we don't have much time. She handed me a business card. My brother's a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. He can help, but we need to move fast. I thought of my packed suitcase hidden in my parents' garage, the emergency cash, the escape plan I'd been crafting. It wasn't enough anymore. This wasn't just about infidelity or betrayal, it was about survival. I have to go home, I said. Get something from the house before they realize what we know. That's exactly what they want. Trinity, it's not safe. Nothing's safe anymore. I started walking to my car. But I'm done being their victim. At least let me help. I can. No. I turned back to her. Stay away from the house. If I'm not in touch by tonight, give everything to your brother. Everything. The drive home felt surreal. 8 years of marriage dissolving into a criminal conspiracy. Every loving gesture, every family moment with Jessica, had any of it been real? Mason's car was in the driveway when I arrived. Jessica's too. They were waiting for me, probably with another perfectly crafted lie, another manipulation. But I had something they didn't know about, the truth. I touched my mother's key in my pocket, thinking of her words about choosing my own justice. Then I checked that the recording app on my phone was running and walked into my house for what I knew would be the last time. There you are, Mason called from the living room. We've been worried sick. I closed the door behind me, hearing the click like a gunshot. Have you? How thoughtful of you both. It was time to see who would break first. Mason and Jessica sat in our living room like royalty holding court. The same room where we'd celebrated holidays, shared dreams, built what I thought was a family. Now it felt like a trap closing in. You've been acting erratic, Mason said, his voice carrying that concerned tone he used when manipulating clients. We're worried about your mental state. I placed Avery's folder on the coffee table between us. Worried I'd find these? Jessica's perfectly manicured nails dug into the armrest. Mason didn't move, but something flickered behind his eyes. "Where did you get those?" he asked softly. "Does it matter?" "What matters is what they show." I pulled out the life insurance policy. "Planning for my unfortunate accident, Mason?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Honey, you're not well. Those documents are standard business practices. Jessica can explain." Like she explained her financial troubles? I turned to his sister. "How many other women have you helped him destroy?" Jessica stood abruptly. "You ungrateful bitch. Everything we did was for this family." "Family?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. "Is that what you call your little criminal enterprise?" Mason moved then, quick as a snake, snatching the folder. "You've been talking to Avery. She's smarter than you gave her credit for." "We both are." He leafed through the documents, his mask slipping with each page. "These are copies. The originals are safe. Along with everything else I've gathered." Jessica's phone buzzed. She checked it, her face paling. "Mason, we have a problem. The Thompson account." "Shut up," he snapped, then softened his voice. "Trinity, sweetheart, you're confused. Let's talk about this rationally." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me." "Or what?" His tone changed completely, ice replacing concern. "You'll run to the police? Tell them your crazy conspiracy theories? Who do you think they'll believe, the respected businessman or his unstable wife?" "They'll believe the evidence." "What evidence?" Jessica held up my phone. She must have grabbed it when I was focused on Mason. "This recording?" "Oops." She dropped it into her water glass. I watched my safety net short-circuit and die. "You should have stayed ignorant," Mason said, almost sadly. "It would have been easier." "For who?" "For everyone." He pulled out his own phone. "Now we have to do this the hard way." The front door opened. 2 men in uniforms entered, private security, not police. I recognized their company logo from one of Mason's shell corporations. "Mrs. Walker has been experiencing severe paranoid delusions," Mason told them, his voice professional and concerned. "She needs specialized care." "No." I backed away, but Jessica blocked my path to the stairs. "You can't do this." "We already have," she smirked. "The papers are all signed, by you, remember? My forged signature. On medical papers I'd never seen. Giving him power over my freedom." "The facility is very discreet," Mason said as the men approached. "You'll get all the help you need." I looked at the husband I'd loved, the sister-in-law I'd trusted, seeing strangers wearing familiar faces. Everything had been a lie, right from the start. "You won't get away with this," I said, but my voice shook. Mason smiled, that same charming smile that had won me 8 years ago. "I already have. Multiple times." The security men reached for my arms. I fought, but they were too strong. Through my struggles, I saw Jessica picking up the scattered documents, erasing the evidence of their crimes. "It's for the best," Mason said as they dragged me toward the door. "In time, you'll understand." My last sight was Jessica's triumphant smirk as she dropped the folders into the fireplace. Everything I'd gathered, burning away like my future. But they didn't know about Avery's copies. Or the email I'd scheduled to send to her brother if I didn't check in by midnight. As they forced me into their waiting car, I held on to that thought like a lifeline. They'd won this battle. But the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The private facility's white walls closed in around me as I waited in the consultation room, my hands folded in my lap like a good, docile patient. 3 days of playing along, swallowing sugar pills, nodding at patronizing doctors who believed Mason's lies. The door opened. Mason entered, immaculate in his business suit, followed by Jessica. Their confidence faltered when they saw Avery sitting beside me. "What is she doing here?" Jessica demanded. Visiting hours are for family only, Mason said smoothly, reaching for the call button. Don't bother, Avery said. The staff are rather busy dealing with federal agents right now. The color drained from Mason's face. Jessica grabbed her brother's arm. You're bluffing, she said, but her voice trembled. I stood, steady on my feet despite the sedatives they'd tried forcing on me. The FBI doesn't bluff about wire fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder. Murder? Mason laughed, but his eyes darted to the door. You're delusional. That's why you're here. That's why you put me here, I corrected. But I wasn't the first, was I? Tell me, what happened to Catherine Porter? He flinched at the name. Jessica's perfectly manicured nails dug into his arm. She had an accident, Jessica said quickly. Everyone knows that. Like I was supposed to have an accident? I pulled out my phone, my real phone, not the one they'd destroyed. The FBI has been very interested in the pattern. Young women, married to Mason, diagnosed as unstable, then tragic accidents following massive insurance payouts. Mason's mask cracked. You can't prove anything. Actually, she can, Avery stepped forward, her own phone recording. Your sister talks in her sleep, Mason. Has for years. Remember those sleepovers when we were roommates, Jessica? I recorded everything. Jessica's face contorted. You bitch. She lunged at Avery, but I stepped between them. It's over. The FBI has everything, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, Jessica's confessions. Even Catherine's real autopsy report. You're lying, Mason whispered, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Am I? I moved closer, seeing fear replace confidence in his eyes. Check your phone. The Thompson account isn't the only one frozen. Everything's gone, Mason. Everything. His phone buzzed. He checked it, hands shaking. Jessica peered over his shoulder, her face crumpling. No, she breathed. No, no, no. Yes, Avery said. Your empire's falling, and we made sure everyone knows why. Your investors, your clients, your other potential victims, they all received very detailed emails an hour ago. Mason's composure shattered. He grabbed my throat, slamming me against the wall. You destroyed everything. Mason, don't. Jessica screamed, but Avery was already moving, her taser connecting with his side. He crumpled, twitching. The door burst open. FBI agents poured in, weapons drawn. Jessica tried to run, but didn't make it 2 steps. As they read Mason his rights, he stared at me with pure hatred. You'll never prove it, he spat. You're just a crazy woman. My unstable wife. I knelt beside him, speaking softly so only he could hear. That's where you're wrong. I'm not your wife anymore. The divorce papers were filed last week. You're not my problem, you're the FBI's problem now. And mine, Avery added, showing her badge. Did Mason ever mention I worked white-collar crimes before becoming a financial analyst? No? Guess he wasn't the only one living a double life. Jessica screamed obscenities as they led her away. Mason remained silent, his perfect facade finally shattered. Before they took him, he looked back at me one last time. I loved you once, he said. No, I replied. You loved what you could take from me. There's a difference. The agents led them both away, leaving me with Avery in the suddenly quiet room. You okay? She asked. I touched my throat where Mason's fingers had left marks, feeling nothing but relief. I will be. What happens now? Now? She smiled. Now we make sure they never hurt anyone else again. I walked out of the facility into bright sunlight, leaving behind the remnants of Mason's carefully constructed lies. The truth had finally set me free. The courthouse steps felt colder than I remembered from the preliminary hearings. Mason and Jessica's sentencing had drawn a crowd, former clients, journalists, and other victims who'd come forward after the story broke. Catherine Porter's mother clutched my hand as we waited. "I never thought we'd see justice," she whispered. "For 8 years, I knew he killed her." I squeezed her hand back, remembering the perfume on Mason's shirt that started everything. Such a small detail that unraveled such an elaborate web of lies. The doors opened. Reporters surged forward as Mason and Jessica emerged in handcuffs. Their designer clothes were gone, replaced by prison orange that made Jessica's face look sallow. Mason's eyes found mine in the crowd, but his manipulative charm had vanished. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. 25 years, Avery said beside me, her FBI badge catching the morning light. No possibility of parole. Jessica stumbled on the steps. No one moved to help her. The sister-in-law who'd once commanded every room with entitled confidence now couldn't meet anyone's gaze. "Trinity!" Mason called out as they led him toward the prison transport. It didn't have to end this way. I didn't respond. He'd lost the power to compel my attention, my reactions, my anything. Instead, I turned to Catherine's mother. "Would you like to get coffee? I think we have stories to share." Later, in a quiet cafe, I sorted through the last of Mason's papers. Our house had sold quickly once the scandal broke. Most of the money went to his victims' families, which felt right. I kept only what I'd brought into the marriage and the evidence of his crimes. "You never told me," Avery said, sliding into the booth. "How did you know I was FBI?" "I didn't." I smiled, remembering her perfect timing at the facility. "I just knew you weren't what Mason thought you were." "None of us were." Speaking of unexpected things. She pulled out a folder, similar to the one that had started all this. We found more accounts. Offshore holdings, shell companies. He was worse than we thought. No, I closed the folder without looking. He was exactly what I thought he was, in the end. A lie trying to look like love. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother asking about dinner. The key she'd given me still hung on my keychain, but I hadn't needed it. I'd found my own way home. "The media wants interviews," Avery mentioned. "Your story could help other women recognize the signs." "Maybe someday." I stood, gathering my things. "But right now, I want to focus on recognizing myself again." Outside, autumn leaves skittered across the courthouse steps where justice had finally been served. Catherine's mother had cried when Mason was sentenced, but I hadn't. My tears had dried up somewhere between finding that perfume and discovering the truth about his other victims. "Trinity?" Avery called as I reached my car. "There's something else." "Another case, similar pattern. We could use your insight." I paused, key in the ignition. Part of me wanted to drive away, leave all this behind. But another part remembered how alone I'd felt before finding Catherine's story, before connecting the dots that led to other victims. "Send me the files," I said. "But not today. Today I'm having dinner with my parents." She nodded, understanding. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of the prison transport in my rearview mirror, carrying Mason and Jessica to their new life. I didn't watch it disappear. My phone buzzed again, a group text from the victims' support network we'd formed. Women sharing stories, warnings, triumph. Some seeking revenge, others justice, all finding strength in breaking their silence. I turned toward my parents' house, where dinner and normal conversation waited. The weight of Mason's betrayal had lifted, replaced by something unexpected, not just survival or revenge or even justice, but a quiet certainty that I could trust myself again. Sometimes that's the best revenge of all.